I call to order the regular City Council meeting on December 16th. The time is 6:25 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Ronnie Felder.
Here.
Chairperson Julia Botel.
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Douglas Lawson.
Here.
Councilperson Trodrick McCoy.
Here.
Councilperson Kashamba Miller Anderson.
Present.
Councilperson Shirley Lanier.
Here.
City Manager Jonathan Evans.
Present.
City Clerk Claudine Anthony is present. City Attorney Don Nguyen.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by the very much welcomed back Mayor Felder. Thank you. Any person who would like to speak on an agenda item, please complete a pink public comment card located at the front desk prior to the item being taken up by City Council for discussion. Members of the public will be given a total of 3 minutes to speak on all items listed on the consent agenda and 3 minutes to speak on each regular item. The time limit for public comment may be reduced by a vote of the City Council based on the voluminous nature of the public comment cards. In no event will anyone be allowed to submit a comment card to speak on an agenda item after the resolution is read or item is considered. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions? We know we do have some late
Yes, Madam Chair.
additions. Mr. City Manager.
If I can have the city clerk read the modifications to the agenda into the record.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we have an addition of item number 6A, which is a community benefit from the Office of Councilperson Trodrick McCoy for Dixon Alternative Family Services in the amount of $1,000. Is for the 2020 holiday toy giveaway. Item number 6B, a community benefits request from the Office of Councilperson Julia Botel for She Speaks International for their 2020 Project Thanksgiving in the amount of $500.
Excuse me, I think that's 600.
My apologies, in the amount of $600. And item number 10 is not an addition, but there was a revision to the body of the resolution. There was item number, section 1, parent 4, titled Quotations from Consultants Advisor, was added to the body of the resolution, and it's adopting a reasonable application fee for submission of an unsolicited public-private partnership proposal pursuant to section 255.065. I believe that's Florida statute. That's a Florida statute number, although it's not indicated on the agenda.
Do we have any disclosures by council?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
You're recognized. Did I hear a voice? Or was it? Am I hearing things?
Did you hear me, Madam Chair?
Councilwoman Miller Anderson, you're recognized.
For the community benefits that are being added on, I believe they're new. Have they gone through and been vetted?
Yes, I think I can answer that in my case, but I'll let the clerk respond. I think the answer is yes.
Madam Chair, members of the board, it is my understanding from Mr. Evans that they did.
They did.
They did go through the
They
proper
did go through
process.
the proper process, yes, thank you. Any other questions? Any other disclosures? Would someone care to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Would someone second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion to adopt the agenda has been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Councilperson Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier,
Yes.
Pro Tem Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel.
Yes. The agenda has been approved by a vote of 5-0. Consent agenda. All matters listed under this item are considered to be routine, and action will be taken on one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council person so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Would someone care to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I want to pull number 5, please.
Number
Sorry.
5.
Let me see if I got.
That's the item about the settlement.
Yes.
Is that it? Okay. So would someone care to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda with item 5 removed?
Motion to adopt, I move to adopt consent with item 5 pulled from agenda.
Would someone care to second?
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the motion to adopt the consent agenda has been moved and seconded.
Councilperson Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Pro Tem Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel.
Yes.
Madam Chair, will you announce that motion passes, please?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Will you announce that the motion
Oh,
passes?
yes, I'm sorry, thank you. The motion passed with a unanimous vote of 5-0.
Item number 5, resolution number 122-20, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, authorizing settlement in the case of Daniel Sheasley versus the City of Riviera Beach, case number 50-2019-CA-016606-XXXX-MB, authorizing Gallagher Bassett to make payment in the amount of $81,500 as full and final settlement and providing an effective date.
Would someone care to make a motion to authorize settlement of the case?
I move that we accept the settlement as stated.
Thank you. Would someone care to second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council authorize settlement in the case of Daniel Sheasley versus the City of Riviera Beach. Mr. City Manager, do we have a presentation from the attorney?
Madam Chair, this is an item that will be presented by the City Attorney's Office.
Okay. Yes.
Madam Attorney, you're recognized.
Thank you. The case of Sheasley versus City of Riviera Beach involves a motor vehicle accident where Mr. Sheasley was struck by one of our police vehicles. The settlement is in the best interest of the city, and that is why we're recommending it. I sent a memo to you all late last week, and I think I talked to most of you individually. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does anyone-
Madam Chair,
You're recognized, Councilwoman Lanier.
I just wanted to ask the city attorney, and you probably don't have this information in front of you, but where are the majority of our settlements coming from in terms of department?
Well, it depends on the case. If you're talking motor vehicle accidents, I have seen that most of them are from the police department.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other, Mr. McCoy recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Manager, perhaps the attorney or even our Honorable Police Chief, can someone explain, like, the culpability of this at this point, or is that not practical? Is there any fault?
There was dash cam video in this case. It showed the officer turning into the path of the plaintiff. There was nothing that the plaintiff had, no comparative negligence. The officer wasn't en route to an emergency. He was just driving along. His lights were not on. His siren was not activated. And it resulted in injuries to the plaintiff.
Okay. Mr. Evans, this item, when we have an officer that may have been inadvertent or, purely an accident, is there any kind of, any kind of reprimand or any action taken in these situations?
In these particular cases, since Chief Osgood has joined the organization, there is disciplinary action that is a result of at-fault accidents caused by police officers or any persons in the agency.
Okay. And I'm particularly concerned, not necessarily regarding the, whether there's any reprimand, but, here we are again, and I think I said this last month, that we cause significant disability to individuals, in many cases that are residents of this city who have, disabilities that impair 10, 15, 20% of normal life function that's going to require further treatment. And, and just as the attorney said, it's in the best interest of the city. And I know this isn't a court of law, but in the best interest of justice and doing what's right, when somebody has significant injuries, we figured we'd throw $80,000 at it. And until I can see that we're doing something that calls for more training, more proactive, programs, it's like we always throw money after someone's bad mistake, and I don't support that. And then the money doesn't even measly. It's not even significant to the amount of injuries this person sustained. Now, I know when I finish, I'm going to hear the argument, but they settled. But here's the problem with that. If they had to go and fight with the city for 2 or 3 years, at some point they begin to throw up their hands. And if you think about it, if we would have settled this early on, we would have probably cut that $80,000 right then and there, as opposed to what we're spending with our insurance company on top of what outside counsel is costing us. And I don't want individuals to think that they can just come here and this is a payday, but for all intents and purposes, if we injure somebody and we're negligent, I don't think we need to be trying to throw $20,000, $50,000, $80,000 to someone or to someone who's a victim of negligence, who has a lifetime of disability. And I don't appreciate that, and I don't like it. And the other thing that benefits the city is obviously the sovereign immunity caps. And I just don't support these items because I just think I don't want to shortchange somebody who's going to be dealing with an injury for the rest of their life. So I won't be supporting this item, and I would encourage my members not to. And let's go back and negotiate something that encompasses, that this person has a lifetime of treatment.
Any other comments or questions from board members or council members? It has been moved and seconded that council authorize settlement in the case of Daniel Sheasley versus the City of Riviera Beach. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lanier?
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy?
No.
Councilperson Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Pro Tem Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Votel?
Yes. This passes by a vote of 4 to 1. Item number 7.
Presentation on 22nd Annual Riviera Beach Educational Scholarship Program. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have a public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is one of the things that the City of Riviera Beach has prided itself on for a significant amount of time. And at this particular moment, I would like for Ms. Roseanne Brown, the chair of the Education Scholarship Committee, to make her presentation to the council with regards to the recipients.
Good evening. How are you all?
Good evening.
Thank you.
It is good to be here, and this is, I am Roseanne Brown, and y'all got me in a little bit of trouble. I am co-chair of the Education Committee. The chair is my good friend Cynthia Beckton, and we're still going to be friends after tonight. And but the scholarship program is one of the best things that the City of Riviera Beach has ever done and continues to do. This is actually the 23rd year of the scholarship program. Ms. Beckton is going to give you some stats on just how many kids we've helped overall and how much money. And I say we because all we've done is had the opportunity to administer it. The funds come from the city and city business partners, and she will mention some of them. But this year, the scholarship program obviously had some challenges because of COVID. It was affected by that also. But it began on schedule in mid-February. It ended on June 1st, which was the city manager granted us authorization to extend the deadline because young people were having so much trouble getting their transcripts and other materials that they needed. There was 30 applicants, 27 of them qualified. The other 3 did not have proof of city residency, so they could not be considered. Of those 27, 21 have actually gotten all of their information in and their checks have been processed. There's still 6 young people that are trying to get their information together. Some of them, because of COVID and having to do all virtual learning, are not carrying the full complement of 12 hours, which is required. Some of them are only able to carry 9 hours. So the manager's staff has been very patient with those young people, and I hope that you all will continue to be patient with that other 6 who were qualified this year. And but it has been a success, and again, this is the 23rd year of the Education Scholarship Program. And on behalf of now 500 grateful students, we say thank you, because the 21 that was awarded this year took the total that have received scholarships to 500 over the 23-year period.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
We certainly say thank you. Thank you again and again. We appreciate it because we want to congratulate the city as a committee. And you owe congratulations because this program has no administrative fees attached to it. So every dollar that comes into this program goes to the students. That is commendable. We appreciate that over and over and over again. So when we can say to parents, submit these scholarships to us, we can do those kinds of things. We gave you a summary of this program. Please consider, as you deal with your discretionary funds, that you will look towards 2021, because we will have graduates coming out next year, and we certainly want to fund them again. We also want to put another seed before you this evening, and that is to start highlighting these youth. We're talking about over 500 youth right now that have come through this program. And in this pandemic age, this is an excellent opportunity to find them, let them do a little blip, and start doing some type of a virtual presentation to this community and to this world, because they have so much to offer. So we want to not only talk to you about this year, but we want to talk to you about finding a way to kind of pat ourselves on the back and say, this is truly wonderful. And yes, Roseanne is pointing to me because, and we're going to round this number because we know you're going to help us round it. Even though it stands at $485,000, to me, that's $500,000 to match the 500 students that have gone through. And if anybody wants to kick in $15,000 tonight, it will be well appreciated. Thank you so very, very much. We are about the business. I know you had some persons here, but understand when you deal with the scholarship committee members, we know how to ask for money for these children because they are indeed worth it.
Tell them about the 1,000 that we just deposited.
Oh, National Village Homeowners Association makes it a commitment. They just gave us $1,000. That's right.
That's wonderful.
Because they believe so much in this program.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Ms.
Do
Beckman,
you?
before you
Anybody have it?
do you have a way of tracking these students? I mean, do you keep track of them so we would know how to contact them if we wanted them to come back and speak with council?
I think we could probably work that out. And the reason I can say that is because we have such a close-knit community that, and it would be well worth it. I would really think that's something we need to take on.
I agree. Thank you.
And the other thing is, don't get me in front of this microphone, because this is my baby. This is the one I introduced when I sat where you are. This academic camp that we had at one time, that these children were an outgrowth of that academic camp. So we really have done a lot in this city for our children.
Thank you so much.
And they are children to me. I can call them that.
Do we have any other comments from board members? Mr. Lawson, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, thank you. Ladies, thank you so much for just the work you put into this program. Is there anything that we can incorporate into the program that can request or add a community service, internships, externships, working with the city to build that relationship with these young men and women that we're giving the funding to kind of help build the relationship with the community, possibly coming back and providing community service hours, working with externships or internships with some of our department heads, and kind of building that relationship with the city a little bit stronger.
You know what? The Lord giveth the path of so many things. And definitely in this day and age, in this a way of we can do the videoing, of sharing in that mode, I just think the avenue is available, and they, having conversation with them, they can probably tell us exactly how we can do that.
Yeah, I'd love to see some type of community project that we can really continue to build that relationship. Is submitting the application and providing them with the funds and resources, but I also want to empower and build more community leaders. And we start showing and building that relationship with them, having them come in and intern, extern with some of our department heads or with some of our council, with some of our staff. That allows for them to kind of build that morale and that support with the council, with the city.
Great. Wonderful.
So, and then also, Mr. Evans, if I could go ahead and add $1,000 from my community benefit to the organization as well, just to continue to support the progress of the scholarship, because I spoke to Ms. Brown about a year ago, and this program is phenomenal for our community, and I would just love to see more of the relationship building with those kids. So, for my community benefit, if I could add that to the scholarship program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely, we can do that. Councilman, is there another interested party?
Going once?
1,000 on the table?
Well, it seemed like Dr. Botel looked at me. I was going to pull out my actual checkbook and challenge Doug Lawson to use his personal money. Because I write a check right now.
Go ahead and write the check, Councilman, and I will follow suit, sir.
Okay.
Well,
who do I make this to?
Check on our personal.
You make it to
So take back your city community
the
benefit.
city of
In
Riviera
addition
Beach.
to, I will still commit those funds from community benefit, because this is a community benefit.
Well, there you go.
And I want to see that, but in addition to Councilman McCoy's check he's writing, I'll match that check as well. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't think I have
So
any community
let me
benefit
make
money
sure
left.
before you leave, I give this up. Don, let me borrow 1,000.
Well, while you're writing that check, then, you know, my background is marketing, so I wasn't going to leave without closing the sale and asking to make sure that we had your commitment to continue with this program, but you've already done that by your donations and your support. We thank you. So we'll be getting with City Manager's office, and as usual then, expect that the scholarship program will open with applications available mid-February 2021. Thank you so much for your continuing support.
Should we make this out to the Riviera Beach Scholarship what do
No,
we make?
you make it out to the Education Scholarship
I already
Program.
put it to the
City of Riviera Beach Education, City of Riviera Beach, and you put in the note, scholarship program. And we take it down to the little window down and, at City Hall and deposit it.
Well, there you
So that means that we will be able, I don't know how much you appropriated this year in your budget. Usually it's around $30,000. And so what we will do is we will step up the advertising for the program this year and hopefully bring in some additional applicants. We kind of balance how much money is available and how much additional advertising there is, because we hate to turn away students. And since 2013, every qualified applicant has been funded. There was one year, I remember, when the first time that Mr. Evans was here, we were short $9,000, and we're going to have to turn away nine students. And he found a way to put in the entire $9,000 that year. So since 2013, no student who qualified has been turned away.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Benton.
Madam,
Ms.
Mr.
Benton.
Pro,
I'm giving $1,000. I didn't bring my checkbook like Councilman McCoy, but we'll get it to you. You know where I'm at.
Well, Madam Chair,
McCoy, you're recognized.
so Mr. Evans, I thought we had this discussion during budget process that the monies from, that weren't expended, that we were gonna continue to roll over. Can we keep the education, scholarship program a continual rolling over program so that if there's monies, it's not swept back into the general fund every year?
Yes, Councilman, we always budget roughly about $30,000 every year, and they do an excellent job in making sure that $30,000 is expended. But in the event that there is any left over, we can carry that forward and grow the fund throughout the years. So that's something that we can easily do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will take it to the magic window tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening. Okay, presentation number 8.
Presentation of disparity study update. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
Madam Chair and members of the board, pursuant to the direction that was provided to staff, we have began the process of working towards a disparity study. We know that we want to ensure that individuals in our community, small businesses, local businesses, minority-based businesses have an opportunity to participate in the expenditure and contracts related to city operations and city activities. At this particular moment, I'm going to turn the presentation over to our procurement director, Ms. Althea Pimsel, who will speak a little bit about the program and then introduce 2 of our consultants that we have on board that are helping to facilitate this process. Ms. Pimsel, 3.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor Felder, Chair Protel, Chair Pro Tem Lawson, Council, City Administration, and citizens. Thank you so much for giving us time to be able to do a disparity study presentation. This is very important, not only to procurement and to council itself, but for our community overall. As you know, the purpose of this study actually is to see if there's inequities in the expenditures of contract and other dollars used in the community. So the goal is to see if there are inequities and to correct those inequities through policy. We have 3 process partners that are assisting us with that: MGT Consulting Group, B2G Now, Tidings and Rosenberg LLC. The goal that we have tonight is to be able to provide an overview of a pre-disparity study, a post-disparity study, and also the process of the disparity study itself. It generally consists of 4 components: data collection, data evaluation, a solicitation for the study itself, and defense of the actual study that's done. Tonight, you're going to hear from our process partners that will provide us with an overview of each of those areas. MGT Consulting presenter will be Dr. Fred Seaman, and his goal is to provide us with pre-study preparations to determine the sufficiency of the data proposed by B2G Now for future and collection and conducting the study itself. B2G Now role is to assist us with integration into our Tyler system, having the foundation for the study, using several modules from their software suite that consist of contract compliance, expenditures, and ERP integration. Tidings and Rosenberg LLC, Attorney Franklin Lee role is to help us with our code review and to write a code that we're able to increase participation, enable the city to accurately measure the success and the impact of the various policies. With that being said, the presentation will be broken into 3 parts primarily: the pre-disparity study itself, the disparity study process. We're going to talk a little bit about the software overview and integration, as well as the policy deliberations. So first up will be Dr. Siemens from MGT Consulting. Next.
Mr. Stevens, do we have Dr. Seaman on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Here we go.
Okay, Dr. Seaman, thank you.
Mayor Felder, Madam Chair Botel, and Chair Pro Tem Lawson, and esteemed council members, good evening. Very pleased to be in front of you this evening. Go to the next slide, Ms. Penzel.
Dr. Seaman, the next slide is available.
Okay. MGT will be responsible for what we call in phase one, which is the pre-disparity study data preparation. And the data that we're going to be assessing will be the data that BTG now prepares related to the city's procurement. And this phase is extremely important. We're going to compile those data sources into one electronic repository. And the main outcome of this particular phase is to determine the extent to which you are what we call disparity study ready. What is a disparity study? Disparity studies, as Ms. Pensel mentioned, they help to identify whether minority and women-owned businesses are getting their fair share of contracting dollars. And it's really about contracting equity. These studies can take up to 12 months. We have done some disparity studies that have been completed in less than 12 months. We've also conducted disparity studies that have taken much more than 12 months. And it's also important to note what a disparity study is not. It's definitely not a cure-all. It's not a magic bullet. It's not necessarily a mechanism for set-asides, which in today's environment just won't pass legal muster. And quite frankly, a disparity study is only good if the recommendations are implemented. Next slide, Spencer.
Next slide is there.
Okay. Disparity study components. The thought of a disparity study usually begins with a review of relevant laws and policies, and that's very important because disparity studies are grounded in case law, and in particular, Adoran and Prosen and Adoran. And part of that involves strict scrutiny, and strict scrutiny is required when in examining government use of racial preferences and also government use of racial classification. So typically, we're at the beginning of a study, we have take a deep dive into laws, policies, and regulations. Also part of a major component is the geographic and product market area, the utilization analysis, the availability analysis, the actual disparity calculation, and the importance of the city data that BTG now is going to be looking at is that it's key to those analyses that we're going to have to do. We'll also do a private sector analysis, and then the anecdotal data collection and community engagement piece of it is very important because that's where we hear from businesses, local businesses, minority and women-owned businesses, small businesses, and advocacy organizations about attempts to do business with the city of Riviera Beach and actually doing business with Riviera Beach. And from all of these activities you see here, we will develop a final report and recommendations. Next slide, please.
Next slide is there.
Okay. This will give you some idea of the type of data assessment that will go into the work that MGT will be doing. It's part of that will involve looking at data related to prime contractors, but most important is data related to both MWBE subcontractors and also non-MWBE subcontractors. MGT, we've conducted well over 220 disparity studies, and what we found in many of those studies is that while agencies collect very good prime contractor data, they're not so good on collecting the MWBE subcontractor data, and less good, if that's a word, on collecting the non-MWB subcontractor. And what you'll hear from BTG now is their capabilities to provide that kind of data, which will be key to the analysis that will be conducted for the disparity study.
Thank you, Dr. Seaman. Are there any questions for Dr. Seaman?
Any questions from Councilwoman Miller Anderson or Lanier? Thank you, Ms. Pimsley.
Thank you. Next up will be Joshua Laurie from B2G Now. He'll talk about the software collection. Joshua?
Thank you all for having me. So for B2G Now, as Dr. Seaman alluded to, B2G Now from a software perspective will really help with the data collection to set the foundation for the disparity study going forward. So next slide, please, Althea.
It's there.
Thank you. So a couple of things that we wanted to talk about from a B2G Now perspective is the system is very, very comprehensive and configurable. There's quite a bit the system is capable of performing. We really have been working closely with the Director of Procurement, Althea Pemsel, and really identifying the key functionality that we really need to provide in preparation for the disparity study. We're really excited to play our part in this team effort. From a cost-effective perspective, it is important to understand the system is provided as a 100% web-based, cloud-based, software-as-a-service solution. So there's no installation there into the software or the hardware network there on their side. The other aspect here is the collaborative perspective for the vendor community. One huge part of this is making sure that the vendors are included and engaged. There is no cost for the vendors. They all have access to the system with the same username and password. And then the system is very secure and reliable. B2G Now is SOC 2 Type 2 certified. And then as Ms. Pemsel alluded to, from a data integration perspective, we can seamlessly integrate data from the Tyler system to really help really collect the data we need, not just from the prime contract level, but the lower tier subcontractor spend level. And then the system is very scalable. As we grow out and this program evolves, there's more modules, system functionality that we can add to further enhance what we're doing there with the city of Riviera Beach. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Thank you. So we have a three-step approach from our project implementation. We've already done quite a bit of due diligence with Ms. Pemsel there and really identifying the scope. From there, we're really configuring each solution, cleansing the data, identifying exactly how each module is going to be configured, and then we will perform ongoing training, not just with the staff, but also with the vendor community. Next slide, please. And here from a supply diversity system, just wanted everybody to understand how this will flow. So there is already a self-registration perspective going on. Ms. Pemsel and the staff of the City of River Beach is already actively engaging from an outreach and event perspective. And then the first thing we are going to perform is a data enrichment data scrub, which we're really going to take the spend data, the contract spend data over the last couple of years, really analyze it, scrub it up against those certified directories and know where are we at today in terms of the dollars spent. And from there, as Dr. Seaman alluded to, B2G Now really helps with the lower tier subcontractor payment confirmation, aggregating the dollar spent beyond that first tier prime, right, for both diverse and non-diverse subcontractors. And then the system itself is actually designed to help collect the needed for disparity studies. So the specific data elements that are needed going forward will also be collected here in B2G Now. And then going forward, there is even a goal-setting module which will allow the City of Riviera Beach to place the data collected from the disparity study right within the B2G Now system and use the data there in addition to the contract data to actually set legally defensible goals going forward. So we're very excited to play our role in this team effort. Thank you, Ms. Pemsel. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Laurie. Next up, we will have policy deliberations.
Madam Chair?
You recognize Mr. Wilson.
Sorry, Ms. Pimsel, just a few questions.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Miller Anderson, I'll get to you in 1 minute. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you. Ms. Pemsel, the question would be actually for Mr. Lowry with B2G.
Sure.
Well, first for you, have we begin the process of implementing B2G? Have we already secured them as a vendor for the city?
Yes, we have.
Okay. So how long is this process going to take to integrate with our Tyler system?
We're hoping to have this done in a few months. We've already started. We're on level 2 of the project implementation process. We have the software. We're starting to work with peer. We've had horrible Tyler problems this week as it would happen, so we didn't get as far as we like, but we've already started with the implementation, looking at the data tables and seeing how we can overlay that. The actual time, I've never done it with B2G before, but we certainly want to have it done in a couple of months or so.
Okay, so if Mr. Lowry could answer with incorporating if he's worked with Tyler system previously and how long it took to integrate the systems. Mr. Lowry?
Yes, sir. And with Tyler specifically, B2G now has integrated with Tyler and many other ERP financial management systems. The standard integration usually takes about 90 days, but sometimes we can exceed that target and you hit more around the 60-day mark. But usually, as Althea mentioned, we're about probably 3 months out from having that system fully integrated and up and running.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Lowry. I believe that staff had a meeting with the organization B2G last year, the end of the year. And I'm excited for you guys to be back and working with the city so that we can get this implemented. That process of 90 days to begin implementing the data collection, once we get everything rolled out, we get Tyler functioning with Tyler, the next steps would be updating the system just to collect information for completing a study. Exclusively a disparity study, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I really want to make sure that we get this executed as quickly as possible. We've already executed a contract with them, and I want all hands on deck to just make sure we get them implemented, whatever support they need with Tyler to really get the system running. Because with the meeting, I believe our vote was in October 2019 to begin collecting data, and we had a meeting with B2G in November. And that meeting from November of last year would have allowed for us to have at least 12 months. And based on Mr. Siemens, he said that we could complete a study within 12 months. And 12 months of data could actually start the study. So if we did incorporate this previously last year when we first brought this to staff, then we would be so much further ahead with completing a disparity study right now. So thank you for bringing it to the table, Ms. Pemsel, and getting it executed. So if we could just put the team in place. And Mr. Evans, if you could deploy as much resources as possible to integrate these systems so we can actually start collecting the data necessary to complete a study.
Any other questions or comments? I think Commissioner Miller-Anderson had a question or comment.
Madam Chair, actually, that was not me. I think Mr. Franklin had his microphone on.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I think she had one more presenter.
You have one more presenter?
Yes, we have
Yes,
one
thank you,
more.
Ms. Pimsel, go ahead.
So Attorney Franklin Lee will discuss policy deliberations. Mr. Lee?
Yes, do we have the next slide?
Yes, it's up.
Yeah, I just kind of want to tie everything together this evening so you have a full picture of how all of this fits together. If you think of the disparity study as pretty much a battery of diagnostic tests that are examining your marketplace.
Excuse me, Attorney Lee?
Yes.
It's coming out a little bit garbled. I don't know if there's another line that's open that we need to mute. Even I'm having feedback.
Or if you would turn down we're getting feedback, so you must have the audio on if you're watching. If you could turn your audio off on the device you're watching with. Would you try to say something again, please?
Still working now?
A little bit. Speak a little bit more and we'll see.
All right. I wanted to give kind of a perspective of what happens once the disparity study is finished. And if you think of the disparity study
Madam Chair.
No, it's really difficult to hear
Can
you.
he,
Sorry.
Madam Chair,
Yes, you're recognized.
can he exit back in? Because his line is like, on from the
Now
phone.
you're breaking up. That's Commissioner Miller Anderson. It's very hard to hear you. Walter, I don't know if there's anything on our end we can do.
I think it's Mr. Lee's line.
Okay. Mr. Lee, is it possible for you to try us on a different line? Yeah, if you haven't, that's a good idea. If you have an earpiece, it would cut down on the feedback.
Okay.
Do you want to try an earpiece?
That's not going to work. Sorry. I'll have to leave and try to come back. I'm not sure why this isn't going through cleanly.
It's very choppy. It's very choppy. It's very hard to understand. What?
Can he exit?
Yeah. Do you want to try to?
Actually come back through.
Why don't you try logging out and logging back in?
Madam Chair?
Yes, you recognize Mr. Lawson.
Ms. Pimsell, while we're waiting on Mr. Lee to come back, is Mr. Siemens still on the line?
Yes, he is. Mr. Siemens?
Yes.
Mr. Siemens, I just have a question in reference to data collection. Pre-study preparation is going to be part of your role. The data that we have on file, is that something that can be scrubbed and reviewed to allow for us to use and expedite this disparity study process and review the last 2 years of data?
Yes, that would be part of our process, yes.
Okay. Is that going to be data that's something that we can submit for actually completing a study? Is it going to be valid data if we have all of the information on file?
Yes, it can be, yes.
Okay. But being that our procurement department, we didn't have proper information or proper items that we were collecting and for our vendors, is that going to be essentially a waste of time to review that 2 years of data if our procurement was missing those questions that are needed to complete a study?
Well, I don't think it would be a complete waste of time. We would really need to take a look at that data and see what's there to make a determination about how usable it is.
And that's the thing.
Can you hear me now?
Much better.
I think that's much better. Do we agree? Yeah, it's much better.
Okay. Yeah, I came back in through my telephone. For some reason, going through Citrix doesn't always work with Zoom. Yeah, so if you can go to the slide, to the first slide, says finding the right prescription, City of Riviera Beach's doctor bag for economic inclusion. I can go from there.
That slide is up, Mr. Lee.
That slide is what?
It's
Slide is
available.
up.
Okay. If you think of the disparity study as a battery of lab tests, as if you were going to your physician for an annual checkup, the disparity study will give you many different snapshots and measurements of the health of your marketplace and whether there's a problem with exclusivity versus inclusivity for various segments of your business population. The disparity study will give you those results. It'll give you these facts. It'll show you what, if any, barriers there are to minority women business participation in your marketplace. And then once the study is complete, you enter what we call the policy deliberation phase. And the policy deliberation phase, you can go to the next slide here. The first step in that process will be development of something we refer to as the policy option matrix, where we tie each of the findings of the disparity study to specific evidence, whether it's statistical evidence or anecdotal evidence regarding the size of any disparities and the nature of the disparities, what's causing those disparity studies. We'll be looking at the diagnoses from the disparity study that support consideration of each of the proposed policy options. Policy options would be such things as perhaps subcontracting goals, a combination of race and gender neutral type remedies for small business, small local business, or minority and women business preferences of some type. We'll then analyze the key pros and cons for each of those proposed policy option remedies. Next slide. And then we're going to try to come up with the right course of treatment for what we've identified as the barriers in your marketplace. The diagnoses will be based upon the totality of all the evidence. As the courts require, there needs to be a strong basis in evidence upon which your policy is based. We'll look first at the race and gender neutral type remedies that are considered, and also the race and conscious remedies, race and conscious causes of the marketplace disparities, and trying to prescribe the appropriate course of treatment. And from there, we got to make sure that the remedies are narrowly tailored. That is, we consider the progression of treatment from the least aggressive to most aggressive and effective treatment options. So to continue the analogy with your annual physical checkup with your doctor, if you've got a problem with high blood pressure, before they put you on medication, they're going to see if they can use perhaps exercise and change in diet to bring their blood pressure down. Those would be tantamount to the race and gender neutral remedies like small business programs that we have in various jurisdictions around the country. But if that doesn't work, then we can we can take consideration of race and gender conscious remedies like minority business programs where you have good faith effort goals, evaluation preferences, and the like. And then we've got to come up with the right medicine. We've got the right medicine, we've got to make sure we got the right dosage. That would go to how do we set the appropriate goals? Based on what the study tells us, we'll know what the relative availability is for minority and women-owned firms in each of the industry segments that the city is purchasing from. And finally, we have to do a real assessment of the resource constraints for effective administration of the remedies. Can you afford the medicine, or do you have the resources to properly implement whatever program you come up with? For example, do you have a way to handle certification of the eligible firms? Do you have a way to make sure that you're getting compliance with the policy once it's put into effect? All of those resource constraints will be taken into consideration in coming up with the right course of treatment, one that can be complied with. Next slide. Some of the examples of the treatment options that I mentioned previously, you're going to start with the race neutral remedies. Some of them will be industry specific. Like in the construction industry, you may have a need for small business or a minority business program. Professional services, the same thing. Where you have lowest responsible bid contracts, your remedies are going to be different from those kind of contracts that are awarded based on a best value assessment or an RFP process. For goods and services and commodities, we have a whole range of different types of remedies that we've found to be effective in boosting both the availability, the capacity, and the competitiveness of small minority and women-owned businesses. And then there's a whole other category of remedies that we will be looking to address that are not industry specific. Things like bid debriefings for disappointed vendors or bidders. Ways that you can influence the access to capital, financing for firms, technical assistance, implementation of a commercial non-discrimination policy that prevents the city from becoming a passive participant in private sector discrimination, debundling larger contracts into smaller contracts, specification review. And last but not least, we want to make sure that we have a good working centralized bidder registration system that's automated so that in the future, it'll be far easier for you to gather the kind of data that's necessary for the disparity study updates that are typically done every 5 years. That will also help to reduce the cost to the city in conducting these studies going forward, because the electronic data will be quite legally defensible and it'll be a lot easier to manipulate to gather than it is currently. So with the help of B2G now, you'd be able to put those systems in place so that you can have a very functional, effective, and legally defensible centralized bidder registration system. And the last slide, just to recap, you're going to have in this policy deliberation phase, the first step in that process is for the City Council to formally accept the disparity study findings and recommendations as a basis for further policy deliberations. The courts want to see that there's no rush to judgment here, that you are actually going through a process that is driven by the data, driven by the facts, and that you're giving good faith consideration of race and gender neutral remedies as well as race and gender conscious remedies. And that's what the policy option matrix process will be about in this policy deliberation phase. You'll then obtain feedback from your city staff. They're going to have responsibilities for implementing proposed remedies. And the business stakeholders. Once again, it's important to get feedback from the business community that's going to be affected by the way that you go about trying to become more inclusive in your procurement processes. And so we will look at each of those proposed policy options in that matrix for enhancing small, local, minority, women business enterprise participation. We'll get the feedback from the stakeholders and from city staff as terms of what's doable. We'll then draft the Equal Business Opportunity Program ordinance based upon the totality of all of that evidence and public feedback. And at that point, the City Council will conduct a public hearing on the proposed ordinance and give feedback on any proposed modifications or amendments to that draft ordinance. And then finally, City Council modifies and adopts the draft Equal Business Opportunity Program ordinance, and then you're ready for the implementation phase. So there's a lot of steps to this process, but in the end, it'll be well worth it because you'll end up with a program that's far more effective than it will be otherwise, because you will have identified every possible barrier that seems to be affecting or adversely affecting the availability and the utilization of minority and women-owned firms in every industry segment. And your program will be one that can be administered effectively by the city. It'll be one that where you will have accountability from staff and also from the business community in terms of compliance. And with that, I'll be happy to take whatever questions you may have.
Any questions or comments from council members?
Madam Chair?
You're recognized, Mr. Lawson.
Dr. Lee, thank you so much for just staying consistent and working with the city and trying to get this program implemented. You've been consistent over this time frame, and you are greatly appreciated. So thank you, Dr. Lee. And also thank you, Ms. Leah Gaines, if you're out there listening. She's actually one of the original individuals that brought B2G and sparked a lot of the disparity study discussions throughout the Palm Beach County. So Ms. Gaines, thank you as well. Ms. Pimsell, I wanted to have just a quick discussion about timeline and expectation over the next 12 to 24 months. Mr. Siemens was discussing a 12-month process of data collection that's necessary to begin a study. I just want to get confirmation that we need about 12 months to begin a study for a disparity study.
Sir, if I may, it's 12 months after the data is collected for him to do the disparity study.
12 months after data is collected.
After the data is collected.
So in the 13th month, we can begin a study. Okay. So what I would like to see then is if we're looking at 90 days for implementation of B2G and then 12 months of data, a solicitation for completing a disparity study, I would like to see that go out within the next 12 months. Because if we put out the solicitation to begin the study, that should have enough time to put the solicitation out, have some responding individuals come back to complete a study, and then allow for us to have it done. So if we can, December 2021, put the solicitation out for the study, we should be prepared within the next 3 months with our data. Because as soon as we have 12 months of data, I want us to start with a study.
If I may confer with my process partners to confirm.
Please.
And the reason I say that, because when we first talked about it, if we are able to use the 2 years that we have, 3 years worth of data is preferred so that if there's any anomaly, there'll be a smoothing of that anomaly. And I know Attorney Lee and Dr. Seaman have discussed together that piece, if you guys would like to chime in on that.
Sure, Alfie, I'll be happy to comment on that. If you think of, again, that analogy with the doctor is very useful. If you get your blood pressure taken when you first get up in the morning, it may be different than it is later at night or, tomorrow. So part of what we try to do with the disparity study is get many different snapshots of your procurement patterns. And so if you just have 1 year's worth of data, there's a good chance that if you had some unusual large procurement in construction, for example, it could skew the results and give you an untrue picture of what typically happens in the normal course of your procurement practices. So we prefer to have at least 2 years, 2 full years of data, preferably 3, to be able to have some confidence that the snapshots we're looking at are presenting a true picture of what typically happens in your procurement process. That's why B2G now is focused on seeing how far back they're able to get data out of the Tyler system and map it into their cloud-based system that will be useful for looking at that subcontract data over the course of maybe 3 years. So I would say, although there's no bright line test from the court decisions on this, from a statistical standpoint and a confidence level, you want to have at least 2 years and preferably 3, and that's what we're going to be shooting for. But you are right, if you start soliciting for the disparity study when we have 2 full years worth of data, by the time you select your consultant, they get the data and start doing the study, you may be close to having 3 years of data by the time they finish it. So that's a good approach, I believe. I hope that answers your question.
It did answer my question, but I guess my statement and frustration is that we have sat up here for a while having this discussion. Again, Ms. Pimsel, thank you for bringing the team together and for executing these contracts, because this is what we've had an expectation. But Mr. Evans, I opened a fortune cookie this week, and it had a quote that said, "I'm on borrowed time." I think I stole that from a colleague, but I'll say the fortune cookie. My concern is that I've been here for 18 months, and this exact same organization of B2G came before us back in October and November last year. We would be at least 12 months closer if we began this process last year, because from the professionals that we have on the line, they're telling us that it's 3 to 5 years of data collection. And being that we're on borrowed time and our city has been suffering when it comes to equity and disparities within our community, the county completed it and it took them 10 years. The West Palm Beach completed it and it took them 8 to 10 years. The school district completed it in waste management. They've all completed disparity studies, and I don't have the expectation for us to continue to fall behind the 8 ball. We're predominantly minority community that needs to check on the disparities within our community. During this time, while we're collecting data, we can also implement policy and changes and updating our code. And I really want us to work with Mr. Franklin Lee to take a look at our code so that we can be impactful over the next 3 to 5 years while we're collecting this data. Whatever processes we can go through with updating our code to make sure that equities and disparities within our community are addressed, and we're assisting with women and minority businesses, that needs to be our focus, because we need to make sure that we're empowering our community. I've said it many times, with 22.5 median income in the city of Rivera Beach is unacceptable. And I feel like I've been wasting my time in this dais, taking away from our family when we're not accomplishing certain things. These challenges should not happen when it seems like they're not being implemented. This was the will of the council. So it wasn't my personal agenda. It was a 5-0 vote. So, Mr. Evans, thank you for bringing Ms. Pimsel in and putting the initiative to get it done immediately. But I want to see this implemented. And if we can have a timeline and execute a timeline of exactly step by step by step what we're doing to implement this study. In addition to the study, also understanding we need to update our code to everything that comes to the city. Whenever people come to the city and put a response to an RFP, they need to make sure that they're addressing our women and minority businesses. And there's a few other items that we have here as well that we're going to talk about that have addressed a lot of that. And you're making strides for that. And as I told you in the meeting that we had, I appreciate the efforts you're putting into it. And thank you so much for the energy that you've brought tonight with this presentation. Thank you, Ms. Pimso. Thank you, Mr. Evans. And Madam Chair.
Any other comments from board, council members?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Miller Anderson, you're recognized.
Yes, and I understand we have certainly been trying to get this done for a number of months, and I do want to echo the same thoughts that I appreciate Ms. Pencil and Mr. Evans for getting this going. I know unfortunately it's been a long process, but I do see light at the end of the tunnel, and so just want to thank the two of them and whoever else was involved for finally getting this to a point where we can get this to actually take place. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you. Any
welcome.
other
Thank
comments?
Madam Chair, if I may.
If I could just add, I'm sorry. I was just going to add one other little comment that the glass is half full. We need not, and I share council's passion and commitment to economic equity. It's extremely important because justice deferred is justice denied. But we need not sit on our hands for the next 90 days while we're waiting for B2G now to finish its data scrub and data analysis for preparations of the study. One of the aspects of the study that's going to be important is evaluation of race and gender neutral remedies that the city's already taken steps on. And we can strengthen right now, and indeed I've already started reviewing the code and making some suggestions about various types of race and gender neutral policies where you don't need a disparity study to implement them today, but they can make your participation for diverse firms much better than what it is now in the absence of any kind of effort. Small local business enterprise program models that have worked very well in Washington, D.C. and worked well in small business programs that work well in San Antonio and other places around the country, and Palm Beach County for that matter. Those policies will need to be evaluated as part of the disparity study to see what happens in the absence of race and gender conscious remedies. If you don't have strong medicine, is the patient getting better? If not, you'll be in a much stronger position to have a very strong and well-rounded effective minority business program. So by no means should we be just sitting on our hands waiting for the grass to grow under our feet. We've got a lot of work to do that's ongoing right now in terms of policy development for race and gender neutral remedies.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. You're recognized.
Madam Chair and members of the board, certainly we will look to bring forward some modifications to the code that allows for some of the things that have been articulated by this board because we know it is a priority, and it is a priority of staff to ensure that there's fair and equitable opportunities for those in our community and Greater Palm Beach County. So staff will look to bring some items for consideration in draft form the first part of the year and get some direction from the board based on the preliminary document, and then from that we would look to memorialize it in a ordinance, and then obviously go through the second readings or through the readings to go ahead and adopt it as policy. So we are already moving in that particular fashion to set up the policy documents. So as the process is going on, that we're doing things concurrently to ensure that there is opportunities for those that reside in our community and do business in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Lawson, you're recognized.
Yes, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Evans, for that. And also, if we can start to identify some funding streams or funding source for this study, because if we're looking to complete it within the next few years, it's an expensive cost that we want to start budgeting for. So if we can be prepared with the next budget cycle to complete the study within the next few years, that'd be good.
Anything else? Thank you so much, Ms. Pimsel, for bringing this group together. We really appreciate it. This is certainly something we want to move forward as expeditiously as possible. It's of great concern to every one of us on this dais, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Item number 9.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the time is now 7:34. What's the desire of the board?
Let's do public comment. Please be reminded that the City Council has adopted rules of decorum, public conduct during official meetings, which has been posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the council chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, and/or the building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Public comments shall begin at 7:30 p.m. unless there is no further business of the City Council, which in the event shall begin sooner. In addition, if an item is being considered at 7:30 p.m., then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item has been concluded. Any person who would like to speak during public comments, please fill out a public comment card located at the front desk and give it to staff before the public comments section is announced. Madam Clerk.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the acceptance of public comment for this particular section of the agenda is now closed. Margaret Shepard, J.B. Dixon, Fane Losman.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Shepard, and I do live in the city of Riviera Beach. To the Honorable Mayor of this great city, and your aide, wonderful young lady, I want to thank her very much. And to all of you, I'm here today because of the meetings, last couple of meetings, and I want to say that when Mr. Evans came here, at least 3 or 4 of you said that you were going to work with him. But I get the feeling, Tragic, you think you're smarter than him. But you're really one of the dumbest people I've ever seen in my life to challenge him. You're really ignorant. And I've really had enough of it. And I hope next year people hear this message, that they give you a free ticket out of here. I'm so sick of you. I really am. You are not smarter than him. And when the chair is speaking, you interrupt her. And you sit on planning and zoning, so you know what it is to be a chair. You know when to have the opportunity to recognize whoever's speaking. Because I've been with the board now, I think about 2 or 3 years, and I know my place. But I'm really tired of it. There's no real structure. And I think you all are adults. You should know the screaming and the yelling by Lanier is an insult. And I want to say that I think we all know about the virus, at least I do. When I go to my doctor, he makes sure that I understand the process. So I don't need a lecture by Lanier. If she's afraid of the virus, God bless her. When my daughter comes see me, and she drives that bus all day long, 32 years, she knows when she comes in the house to protect me. Take off those clothes, wash them, make sure she's wiping down everything. So right now, I know it's tragic, but to continue to beat us down with your ignorance really have gotten a hold of me. So I'm not two-faced, Tragic. I am not two-faced. Whatever I say to you, I can say it to anybody else. But right now, you are really a gutter rat.
J.B. Dixon, Fane Losman, Doretta Polk.
J.B. Dixon, Singer Island, Riviera Beach. At the CRA meeting, I was critical of the performances of many of you who are also commissioners of the CRA, because I thought that the meetings were extremely bad for the reputation of Riviera Beach and affects the number of developers who want to work with us, for instance, on the Riviera Beach Marina, and the executives who want to come and work here, and consultants who want to work with the council. And I repeat that, but I was very almost amused, but it was really quite sad to see some of the reaction to what I said, which was, well, why don't you criticize your friend, the chair, for not controlling the meetings? So I think that this is a perfect example of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because I have sat here as, admittedly, she is my friend, but I have seen her try to say to people politely, you're not recognized, or you've spoken too much, and she is criticized for that. And then, if she doesn't do enough of that, she's criticized for that. There's an old saying that if you're criticized for either thing you're doing, you're probably doing it just right. And maybe that's true. If it's not true, I think that the council needs to, again, in an executive meeting, away from public regard, say, what rules do you want to set for yourself? So far, people have resisted, council members have resisted being given a time limit to talk, or being told that they can only speak in order after the others have spoken. Can they speak the second time? All of these are fine rules. There are other rules that you might want to do, but you really should have some rules that prevent the embarrassment of the city. For instance, we have a $300 million contract up for grabs in the marina. Only two companies applied. And that's ridiculous. You should have had 20 companies. How many companies can say no? There are people who don't want to work here. They don't want to work with the city. They don't want to work with the council. And that is a reputation issue, and I really, really hope that the council will start to improve its image, beginning with the way it conducts its meetings, both here and at the CRA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thane Lozman, Doretta Polk.
Thane Lozman, for the record, executive sessions can only be for litigation matters, for employment contracts. You cannot discuss public business at an executive meeting. I have here a copy of a letter. I'm going to give a copy for the record from the Commission on Ethics. It's addressed to the Honorable Ron DeSantis, Governor of the State of Florida, and it involves complaint number 1920 regarding Julia Botel. The Executive Director of the Commission on Ethics says, Dear Governor DeSantis, the Florida Commission on Ethics has completed a full and final investigation of a complaint involving Ms. Julia Botel, a member of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach. Pursuant to Section 112-3248 Florida statute, we're reporting our findings and recommending appropriate disciplinary action to you in this case. Enclosed are copies of the final order. We recommend that you impose a public censure and reprimand. So he's going to issue an executive order, public censure and reprimand against Botel. She's brought dishonor to the city. Mr. Lawson, Mr. McCoy, I think you'd be totally appropriate to have a motion to replace her once Governor DeSantis issues an executive order. We cannot have somebody who would engage in the behavior she has, and the much more egregious behavior that has come out that could not be included in this complaint because the investigative file had been closed, but it involved a political action committee that was not registered, that was using her office and city office equipment or whatever. So that's going to be a much bigger scandal involving the Ethics Board Division of Elections. We have a transcript of her admitting that that was being run by Judy Dixon. It's going to be a great scandal when that comes out. Number two, can we get some vending machines in one of those rooms so we don't have to go outside the building if somebody wants to have something to drink? Number three, the light poles. About 8 years ago, it was determined there was a survey mistake, and parts of sidewalks, light poles, electrical conduit, electrical wiring was placed on public property. The city did a couple surveys. They acknowledged the mistake. It came about when Dan Taylor filed a lawsuit to move his light pole. Ultimately, the city did move the light pole, and they settled that case for $7,500. And when somebody says, oh, well, you cut down light poles, the city has abandoned those light poles. 4 years ago, they allocated money to either get an easement or to move them. Some light poles can't be moved. I've talked to Mr. Evans about it. He said he's going to try to get an updated cost to either move it or purchase an easement. But you have to do something because they've been abandoned. I can go cut them down, rip out 1,000 feet of conduit, and 3/4 of North Ocean Drive is not going to have lights on there. And finally, Mr. Evans, the city charter categorically states there's only 6 months liveaboards at the city marina. They are allowing year-round liveaboards, which is a problem because they kicked out all the lower quality boats that had year-round liveaboards. I'm going to ask the state of Florida to revert that marina back on a state lease, and then it will go back to the 6-month liveaboard clause. But they're violating the charter right now. Thank you.
Doretta Polk.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, Mayor. My name is Doretta Park, and I'm a citizen of Riviera Beach. And I just want to comment first about the Scholarship Fund. That's an absolutely wonderful program. My daughter was a recipient for 4 years. I take my hats off to everybody, especially those 2 ladies who sponsored that. And I thank you for everything. And also, comment about replacing Dr. Botel, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen at all with this council. I don't think you all would even agree with this. Dr. Botel has done marvelous things for the city of Riviera Beach. The comment that was made the last city council concerning that she does the only things for her side, the east, that is so not true. Dr. Botel has been down to Stony Brook, getting those children bedding. She's always down there getting gifts and whatever. She has partnership with Palm Beach State College for these schools. Come on, let's give her her dues and her props. She's done a marvelous job. And I would expect you all have her applaud, because she has done a marvelous job for the children. And another thing, Ms. Grimsley has always been on her post as giving out masks. And to all of us, she's been stationed all over the city. She's also doing a wonderful job with the youth of our city. And I want to commend Mr. Jonathan Evans for his appointment, which Ms. Graham brought out, which I didn't know, that he was appointed pro-chair of all of the city managers. He was chosen. That's phenomenal, phenomenal. And thank you. So if anybody have on their agenda or on their radar to think they're going to try to do for Mr. Blankenship or Mr. Evans to be terminated, that's not going to happen. Just scratch that off. Just scratch that off. We have to start living in peace here in Riviera Beach. Kindness be showed to each other, not rudeness. And as far as when you're talking about rudeness and what Dr. Botel is going to have to face and this, that, and the other, no one should have to be faced saying, just shut up. Stop talking. No one. There should be start having point of order. Is that being recognized here? And the display that was here the last council meeting, how could she control what happened the last council meeting? Nobody could have controlled that. I was in awe of it. We are not wild animals. We cannot behave this way. We have to have kindness and love in our heart. And for people to run around and cursing and this and that, no mask, this is very wrong. Thank you very much.
Do you have any comments on questions or anything?
Madam Chair, members of the board, that completes public comment.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a point of personal privilege. I'm so happy that the issue of the ethics complaint was raised. Unfortunately, Mr. Lozman neglected to read the rest of the letter, and so I'll take this opportunity to do so. In accordance with the stipulation, which is attached here too and incorporated by reference, the Commission finds that the respondent, as a member of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, violated Section 112.3136 Florida statutes by using her public office address at City Hall for a nonprofit address on its Articles of Incorporation. Yes, I did that. I plead guilty. And that nonprofit is the Friends of the Riviera Beach Schools. And before I started it, I consulted with the city attorney, who gave me advice that I should not give it any money. And I didn't give it any money directly from my community benefits dollars. So I used the address because I wanted it to live on after me. We got one piece of mail to this address, and then the address was changed to a post office box. Next, section 112.3136, Florida statutes, by using her public office Facebook page to solicit donations for the Friends of the Riviera Beach Schools, a nonprofit organization. Well, I guess I have to plead guilty to that one too, because I would take any dollars for any kids in Riviera Beach that anybody wants to give us. Did I realize at the time it was an offense to the ethics? No, and I will never do it again. But I'll continue to try to get money. Now that I'm no longer a director of that organization, I can now give that organization money from my community benefits dollars, and I can solicit all the money from anybody who wants to donate to the Friends of the Riviera Beach Schools. I'm proud that I started that organization. The last one, thank you. The last one was a section by using her official email account to solicit donations from a principal of a lobbyist of the city of the Friends of the Riviera Beach Schools Incorporated. That was Tropical Shipping, and we've worked closely with Tropical. They've given a lot of money to support the children at Stony Brook. When I solicited funds from them, I did not know they were lobbyists. Well, I know that now, and I know to check whenever I get funds from everybody, just check to see if that person is a lobbyist. So I'm proud of the work that I've done. I'm proud that I admitted that I was guilty to these heinous charges that the Ethics Commission has lodged against me, thanks to Mr. Lozman, who raised these issues. And, you know, I'm not proud that I had to spend almost $3,000 in legal fees to get myself out of this, but I'm certainly proud, again, that I've started the Friends of the Riviera Beach Schools and that it's doing so very well. Thank you. Now, moving right along, item number 9.
Resolution number 124-20, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending a street naming policy to provide for a more specific set of criteria for naming streets within the City of Riviera Beach and providing for an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
Thank you. Would someone care to make a motion to accept?
So moved.
So moved.
I think that was Mr. McCoy that moved, and I think I heard Commissioner Lanier second?
Yes. Second, yes.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. The council approved the resolution on street renaming. Do we have a presentation, Mr. Manager?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. If I can have our Development Services Director, Mr. Clarence Sermon, make this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. I am here before you to present staff research related to amending the city's street naming policy. So at a previous council meeting around September, October, this discussion came up to the city's current policy regarding naming of streets, and direction was given for us to look at the policy, update, and amend it and provide those recommendations to the board, which is why we're here today. The existing policy was ratified December 15th, 2010. The direction was to provide more specific guidelines related to the more specific processes for it, as well as a fee schedule. To create this proposed amendment, staff researched multiple cities and counties to prepare this proposed update. This is a summary of some of that research that staff went through. We looked at several localities in the area, including Boca Raton, Fort Lauderdale, Lake Worth, Palm Beach County, as well as Wilton Manors and other cities that are not included on this table. But these are some of the policies that we looked at to find commonalities and things that are common practice in the area that we may or may not be practicing with our policy here in Riviera Beach. So the proposed amendment in front of you does several things. It clarifies who is responsible for the cost of street renaming expenses. This process of creating new signs, removing existing signs and replacing them with sturdier signs with the extra labels on them can get costly, several thousands of dollars, and this amendment clarifies that is the applicant who will bear those expenses. It clarifies the honorary name conventions of, for example, if someone wants to rename a street after a person, what the guidelines should be, and strengthening those guidelines for honoring a person with a street name. And it clarifies the application process. Anyone who is requesting a street rename must start with an application to the Development Services Department, which is currently in the policy, but again, we are clarifying the language related to that. And finally, it identifies the application fee amount as well as the deposit amount. Again, since there are considerable expenses associated with renaming streets, we want to make sure that the applicant is aware of that and that they put down a deposit on the expenses for that, as well as a fee for staff time required. The policy has always stated that when it is proposed for a street to be renamed, that Development Services staff needs to do research in several areas related to the name to make sure it's consistent with other names, doesn't violate any certain guidelines, as well as doesn't create any confusion. In historical research, there's a lot that goes into the report that my staff must provide to you in those cases. So the application fee would be commensurate with that work, as well as the deposit amount. And that is a brief summary of the proposed amendments to this policy.
Thank you, Mr. Sermons. Any questions from council? Mr. McCoy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sermons, there's actually not an amendment. What you're proposing is an amendment, but when you suggested amendment, I'm looking for a strike through and underline version of what you're actually amending, as opposed to a recreation. And in particular, I guess I was concerned with the price, and I guess it's hard to look at two different documents, but I thought there was a nominal $100 fee or something like that before to initiate a citizens initiated street name change in the current policy.
The current policy does state that there is a fee for it, but it doesn't specify the amount, and this change does specify that amount, which is $250 is what we're proposing.
Okay, so how is the fee then handled if it's a city council initiated process for the actual cost of the actual signage? Where does that money come from?
It still requires an application with the application fee, and again, this is consistent with what we've seen in multiple localities that we've researched.
So the actual signage, you spoke about the cost of the signs and replacing them are expensive. If it's city initiated, meaning by the council, where does that fee, who bears that cost?
The application fee or the expense of changing the sign?
Either one. I mean, both for that matter.
This policy amendment recommendation specifies that the applicant would always bear that fee, and so whichever individual applicant submits that to the Development Services Department to be prepared to be heard before council would bear those costs.
Okay, that still didn't answer the question. I'm saying if the city council, this policy you have prescribes for a street to be named, one by a citizens, I guess, initiative, and then the other by the city. Who bears the cost if the city does it?
Madam Chair, if I may answer the question.
Manager.
So the way in which the policy is drafted is that taxpayer resources wouldn't be utilized for the purposes of the street naming process. So if it is initiated by a particular council person, then that cost would be borne by that particular council person that effectively would put in the application and then the costs associated with changing the signs. And that's consistent with the policy reviews that we did of other jurisdictions. Now, if it's something that the board wants a provision that if the board initiated, we can certainly put that in, but this is just grabbing policies that we looked at from other agencies and what they recommended as part of their street renaming process.
Okay, so now that's even more convoluted because this policy doesn't allow for a city council person to initiate a street renaming. It says for a city initiated. And then if you're saying a city council person can, in that event, where would that money come from? Because we don't have monies for this.
that would be something that the council person that's initiating would have to pay out of their pocket versus it being a cost that's borne by the agency.
Okay, I don't know, that doesn't seem to make sense that a city council person, if they choose to do a city, bring up a resolution in front of the body and follow this process, that they would pay for it out of their pocket?
Well, and based on the policy reviews that we've done is a lot of entities didn't want the taxpayer paying for that modification and change. So it was carved out where that particular section that if someone initiated that the cost associated with the entire process is absorbed by the individual that is making that request. Now, if it's the board's desire to modify or tweak or make any modification, we certainly are willing to do so. This is just merely based on the research and the information that we were able to obtain from other entities. So if it's the pleasure of the board to carve out a particular provision that allows for, if it's initiated by the board, then there's no cost associated with it or what have you, we can certainly do that.
Mr. Evans, if I can help clarify a little, on Section 7B, it does discuss proposed name changes initiated by the City Council. There is no cost associated with that. If you go down to 7E, it's any request by an entity other than a government agency then it would be paid for. That $250 application fee would be covered, and if it's a governmental entity, they don't pay that. But in Section 7B, it does say that a proposed change in street name may be initiated by the City Council.
Okay.
And Director Sermon, correct me if I'm wrong, based on that, is it the assumption that the fee would still be paid even though it is initiated, it's still the same process that's prescribed?
The language here contemplates that any individual council member or individual of the community that requests a street name would start with the application. However, if the street rename originated in a council meeting and the council wanted to honor a person of the community and it's a board decision, then that process would not reflect what's on here.
Madam Chair?
Yes, you're recognized.
So I guess that we have some clarity. So if a street naming comes from the dais, then there's going to be no cost of the fee or any of the additional charges for renaming that street.
If it originates from the dais, then my understanding is that the council, in conjunction with the city manager, would discuss how it would be funded.
Okay. And then the total cost for the street renaming, I see there's a $1,000 deposit, $250 application fee. What are the estimated costs? I stepped out for a minute, so I'm not sure if we covered the total cost. And I'm sure that's contingent upon the street that we're renaming and the amount of signs that we're putting up, but the average cost for a street in the city.
The average cost, most recently, I believe we did 28th and 30th, and that was about $4,000 and $5,000 respectively.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Miller Anderson, you're recognized.
You know, if I certainly can support the way that it is written, and even with the caveat that if the council want to or inclined to put forth some sort of honorary for someone to change the name of a street, I think that we probably need to identify, you know, I mean, the whole reason we're having this discussion about these policies is because over the years, people, I mean, you know, we've had random numbers of people that, council people that have wanted to do street namings. And so it just got to be out of control. And so if we are going to now say that we want to continue it with the council initiating these street name changes, you know, I mean, I'm just thinking maybe that money needs to come from each council person's budget, and because there were no controls otherwise. I definitely think we need to have better controls because this stuff adds up. And for the longest, no one really knew or even bothered to find out how much it was costing and where it was coming from. And so if we're going to have it where the council is going to initiate it, I would think that that should come out of our budget some sort of way, and maybe in the future, put a line item in there, not a lot, but maybe a little bit of money in there to cover that if that's what we want to do. But I really feel that this needs to be driven by the community and not council people. That's just my thought on it because it gets to be a political thing and it should not be about that. People who actually deserve it are the ones that should have it, and there should be supporting the community for it. So if we're going to have it council initiated, and if we're going to have to pay for it, there needs to be some sort of cap as to how many that each council person can do or how much money they have to spend on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy.
Okay, so that's what I was asking. If that's the case, like where does the money come from, Ms. Evans? Do we appropriate that or what? Because, I mean, even if you want to use the suggestion of sector dollars, that's not going to last forever. Sector dollars, I mean, I think a few of you have already kind of depleted all of it, so I just didn't understand exactly, what that means in terms of the cost. So that's basically the same question that I asked, and I don't have a problem. I just really like when we're changing a policy, we have a strike through an underlying version. This is just it's just so difficult to look at a brand new PDF document and you go back to another document that's like it's been scanned 10 times and there's not even anything close. And I hate to put the extra work on city on city staff, but it seems like to me, you got to jump back and forth and there are a number of different things. And unless you go through a 7-page document with a fine-tooth comb 2 times over on the old version and the new version, it's like that's why I didn't understand what that meant about the city council person should pay it out of pocket. It's not something I want to do. I mean, pay it out of pocket means out of our budget or what? So I'm just, I'm okay with the, proposing a better policy. I just think that we need to do some tweaking here.
Anyone else? Mr. Evans, could I suggest that we take this back and make some modifications that would allow the council to have better clarity about what the process involves? For example, I think we all agree that there ought to be some budget set aside for this. If the council is going to recommend street name changes and they're going to cost $4,000 or $5,000, then they certainly can't come out of non-existent sector dollars. And we wouldn't want them to come out of community benefits. I mean, there ought to be a set aside for this kind of thing. And if we could take this back and look at it, I think it would be, Mr. McCoy, you recognize.
Question for Mrs. Sermons. Have you seen in any of these other municipalities or any other these local governments where there's a sunset on this, that it stays up for 20 years or stays up for 10 years and it reverts back?
None of the policies I saw from other cities talked about an expiration. They all focused on creating a policy, and I think there were similar situations where they felt that it wasn't order. They would get a proposal, and council would go back and forth about it for several meetings, and they directed staff to come up with a more orderly policy and clarity. But I didn't see any timelines on when the policy would expire.
Okay. And my only suggestion, well, I think what I would add to that is, not just this, but I think perhaps not in your department, Mrs. Sermons, but perhaps in city administration, this should go hand in hand with naming rights. Like if we want to name a hall after somebody, it shouldn't be just something arbitrary. I know the school district has some very strong policy on how they decide to name a building or a school or a cafeteria or something like that, and it's just not something that is picked up. But I think that should be done holistically in terms of this as well. And I don't have a problem with the community getting the opportunity to weigh in on some of these, but I think that process would be played out when I guess you're required to get 2/3 of the adjoining property owners or something like that. So yeah, I'm okay with that, but I think comprehensively we need to look at other naming policies as well.
So, Madam Chair, so is it at the pleasure of the board to go back and make some tweaks and probably better clarify the council-initiated elements contained in the policy as it relates to the street naming, and then also facilities, adding that component to it, and then bring it back to the board with some strike-through and underlines with some modifications to the existing policy.
That's the sense I have, and if you'd like, we can take a vote on it. All right, would someone care to make a motion that we ask city administration to take another look at this with an eye toward making it clear to us where the money comes from and all the other parameters we've discussed just now?
So moved.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Councilperson Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier?
Yes.
Pro Tem Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes. Thank you. Item number 10.
Madam Chair, will you announce the outcome of that vote, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. That was unanimously voted 5-0. Thank you. Approved.
Resolution number 125-20, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, adopting a reasonable... Madam Chair, prior to moving forward to number 10, I did announce that we did have a public comment on number 9.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. We go back to it.
Margaret Shepherd.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
You recognize Mr. McCoy.
So before we go to number 10, can we take number 11 first? Because 10 and number 12 seem to go together, and I would like to have, some continuity in that conversation. So can we take the Gallagher Bassett insurance item? Is it Arthur Gallagher insurance item number 11 first before 10?
I have no objection. Any objection? Any objection from council members? Thank you. Let's take item number 11 then. Madam Clerk.
Madam Chair, before we move forward, Ms. J.B. Dixon also put in a public comment card for number 9.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't see what you were trying to say. Go ahead.
I realize that you've already voted, on this, and my comments weren't intended to say whether you should vote for or against it. But since you are taking it back, I would like you to consider some other things before you bring this back to make it final, the policy. One is that it's not just a matter of money as to how long, how much it takes to name a street. There's also the fact that you have a really decent and clear system of naming your streets, A, B, C, D, 24, 25, 26. It makes it easy to get around the city. Having a plethora of names that most people have never heard of makes it very difficult, and I think could make it much more difficult in the future. I know in the last times that I've been here, some church always wants it to be named for their pastor. There's a church on practically every corner of Riviera Beach. This thing could go on forever. And if an organization wants something changed to honor whomever, then to show that it is the will of the community, maybe they should raise the $4,000 to bring it before you. That would show you that that number of people in the community really wanted that. As far as the other comments, Councilman McCoy's points were all right on target, as they usually are. So I think all of those should be considered too, including the strikeouts and a number of other things, that he just happens to be very good at looking at details. And I hope that all of those details are addressed before the revised proposal comes back. But primarily, it's one thing, to recognize Martin Luther King and Barack Obama, but, if I happen to like my cousin a whole lot, I don't expect you to name a street after that person. And I think you really need to look at how much damage it can do to your really excellent system of street naming, A, B, C, D, E, and then the numbers. It's like New York City. It makes it really, really easy to get around until you have to have somebody with like an incredibly long name. Another way to do that is to keep like 24th Street and then underneath it, write Joe Blow or whoever. And that would keep the numbering system and let it not get out of control. Those are just my suggestions and reactions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we're on to item number 11 first.
Madam Chair, before we move on,
You're recognized, Commissioner Miller Anderson.
regarding what Ms. Dixon just stated, and if, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that the most recent name changes of those streets, they have not changed. Those street numbers are still the actual street numbers, but the names are basically just there. And people are able to still continue to use the numbers or the avenue or whatever it is.
Okay.
So that has not been changed, I don't think, on the books.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, you're recognized, Councilwoman Lanier.
No, I just wanted to say, Commissioner Miller Anderson is correct. Those names that have gone on these streets are simply just a symbol or a sign. It does not change it in Google Maps, and it doesn't change it in the mapping system in Palm Beach County. It's just an added name, honorarium to that particular street.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 12620, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, authorizing the renewal of liability insurance coverage with Arthur J. Gallagher of Florida, and authorizing the Director of Finance to make payments from various city department accounts in the estimated amount of $5,006,959 for liability insurance and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council authorize Arthur J. Gallagher and Company, Miami, to provide a comprehensive self-insurance package for the 2021 fiscal year. Do we have a presentation?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I can have Steve Shields, the risk manager, come up and present this particular item.
Whatever's easiest.
Yeah.
Microphone.
You have to use the microphone, please, sir. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Steve Shields, the risk manager, and we have this resolution before you to authorize the renewal.
Could you just get a little closer to the microphone, or you can move the mic?
And I am going to actually turn this over to Eileen Abella, who's the area vice president for our broker, Arthur J. Gallagher, who's here to provide you a short presentation.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, just for the group's edification, there is a slideshow, but we are going to speak from the slideshow. We're not going to show the slideshow because it has coverage limits and some other information that we prefer not to have available for public consumption. And so there's certain things that we will hit upon but not get into greater detail.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Madam Chair and members of the board, thank you for letting me discuss this with you. Just as a brief overview, what we are talking about right now is the insurance renewal for the 2020-2021 policy period. And the effect of that program, the increases and the premiums and loss fund, is due really to three different areas. One is the overall market, the second is the city's losses, and the third being the city's change in exposures. So as we've discussed in past years, and people in South Florida know, the insurance marketplace, especially in hurricane-prone areas, has a lot of volatility. Following the hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, we started to see a shift in the market from a soft market to a hardening market with increased rates. At the beginning of 2020, there was already the turning of this market, which has been exacerbated by COVID and the changes in the economy. As discussed, the property market has accelerated, nothing out of the ordinary from what South Florida is used to. It should be noted, however, that 2020 was a record Atlantic hurricane season with 30 named storms, 13 hurricanes, and 12 U.S. landfalls, which is causing an increase in rates. Also, the increase in litigation, the atmosphere surrounding police and civil unrest, and the increase in frequency and severity of ransomware claims is all affecting the overall insurance marketplace. Nothing to do with the city of Riviera Beach or even Florida, but this is a nationwide and international phenomenon. We went out to 50 different insurance markets on your behalf to obtain the most comprehensive program on behalf of the city. And what we are presenting is the current program. And as respects the losses, there has been some increase in losses. I know that this was discussed earlier in the presentation, and we will be working with Mr. Shields as well as the insurance carriers and your MBE, our MBE partner who does loss control services on behalf of the city to really target these losses. So with that, the overall insurance increase is in line. You also have, an increase in exposures, primarily payroll, revenues, and increase in property valuation, both for the municipal property program as well as the city utilities program. So it's those three areas that are affecting the overall change in the program, and it should be noted that more than half of the insurance dollars are going to the city's loss fund, and that is city money that will not be spent until such time as a loss is incurred and paid, and anything that we can do to lower the frequency and severity of those losses is money, that savings that goes directly to the city and will not be spent. And with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I think do we have public comments first, and then we'll have comments by the board? Did you say we had public comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the
Go
board.
ahead.
J.B. Dixon, Fane Losman. J.B. Dixon?
She said she passed.
Okay, I'm sorry. Fane Losman?
Thane Losman, those insurance premiums and limits are a public record, even if you don't show them here tonight. That's a pretty significant increase, 31% and then 42%. And I have some questions. I don't know if the council is going to allow the insurance person to answer them, but I see on the back of the agenda, it mentions cyber. Well, cyber, we had that cyber attack, and the council voted to pay a $600,000 Bitcoin ransom to the hacker, and yet after they paid the money, which the FBI said not to pay, when I tried to get a public records request of emails that took place prior to the hack, they still were never recovered. So I'm curious, did that $600,000 ransom payment in Bitcoin to that hacker, did that contribute at all to the premium increase? The other question I have is the city paid $875,000 to my attorneys for the U.S. Supreme Court case I won. They paid that in March. Did that $875,000 judgment impact the city's insurance premium? Lady March Goldwire's case is going to go to trial in the spring. That had to do with, that was a case where she was fired because she gave me a fence permit and Ms. Botel demanded that she be fired. We think there could be a runaway jury in federal court for that case, and it could be a multi-million-dollar jury verdict against the city. So the question is, in the Goldwire case that's coming up, is $5 million sufficient amount of premium for a runaway jury, which I think she will get. It's such an egregious set of facts of what took place, to include running a political action committee out of her office, handing out flyers to fire a city employee, Ms. Goldwire. So those are some of the things. that are interesting. Is that significant insurance increase 31%. How much was attributed to the cyber, the $600,000 payment? How much was attributed to civil rights violations? And is that enough to cover some of the behavior from the chairperson in the Goldwire case? It could be, who knows how many millions of dollars that could be. So, I mean, the people on the west side, they need to understand that they're paying these premiums. They're coming out of the taxes that could be used for something else. You know, $5 million, whatever it is. What's the general fund here? 50 some odd million dollars? So, I mean, the people need to understand that Botel is directly responsible for a lot of these premium increases. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that completes public comment on this item.
Thank you. I'm going to take another point of personal privilege. I did not run a political action committee out of my office. I have never done so at any time, and I can prove it. You're a liar. Excuse me. And I did not have anything to do with the firing of Lady Goldwire. Thank you. Do we have comments and concerns from the board? Questions? Mr. McCoy, you recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question of Mr. Shields. Do you mind? And Mrs. Shields, nothing to your background or credibility. I just want to make sure that you're the appropriate person that I'm going to be asking this question to.
Sure.
You have an insurance background?
I am, I've been in risk management for the last 20-some years.
Could you speak a little closer to the microphone, please?
I am an all-lines adjuster in insurance, and I've been the director of risk management and risk manager for, again, more than 20 years.
In municipal organizations?
Primarily in education.
Okay, well, I think that's close enough. My question... Okay. well, I guess I got a question, and I think, you know, this probably is something that we really need to have a dialogue on, because I realize that since we've been here, we've seen some cases where we've had professionals within our organizations. We hire a finance director, a CPA, an attorney. We hire building officials. We hire engineers. I guess we even hire department directors that have some level of discretion. Have you seen within some of these organizations, even as employees, that the employer requires or would at least mandate that these certain specified positions carry additional professional liability in addition to what the city covers?
Typically, no. The city typically handles all of the liability insurances or the organization to cover them. Unless you're a doctor, you know, they have their own professional liability, but many times the hospitals covers and pays their premiums for professional liability if they do have that.
Right, but even if we pay the premiums, right, and there's some sort of negotiated rate, whether they're collective bargaining or what have you, is that possible to have employees of specified industries and classifications have their own professional liability insurance?
I'd say it's always possible, but it's not always customary.
Okay, and Mr. Evans, I'm really bringing up that question because it seems like in doing our work, we came across a situation where we knew that, and I'm not going to be very specific, I think you'll know what I'm talking about, that we found out that there was a past employee through maybe an omission and negligence 9 years ago may have signed off on something that has monumental effects now, and we're sitting here trying to figure out how do we now go and repair this. And in many cases, it could have been somebody, or I guess even what we heard today, somebody made a misjudgment on a survey. Could have been a city employee, but those have very significant impacts, and we don't see it or recognize it until years later. And that same survey would then cause what we thought was city right-of-way to actually be private property. And then now we're stuck having to come up with money that we didn't budget for to try to make it right. And Mr. Shields, I'm only saying that because in the industry, I've seen, even in the case that you're speaking of, in a hospital requires nurse practitioners to carry their own policy. Hospitals require doctors to have their own professional liability. There is the general commercial, but in addition, I just don't want to find the city, even beyond our time, getting stuck with something that we found out an employee may have made an omission on that has, you know, this, you know, huge impact that literally we didn't prepare for. We didn't even measure the risk that could potentially happen.
I'm not for sure what type of response you are asking, but there's always different ways to look at how you provide insurance. Typically, again, most organizations take on that liability to get good people. When you have people who come in who requires their own insurances, we're back to the institution paying the premium, and then there's still a responsibility, a liability.
If you could speak a little closer to the mic.
Using their insurance, if they exceed their limits, you're still employed by this organization, so you're paying the premium for that person, and you're going to probably pay any excess because typically both entities are brought into the lawsuit.
Sure.
I mean, the good thing with the cities and other public entities are the tort laws and the sovereign immunities, which helps provide additional protection.
Yeah, but what happens when the city's now in that situation forced to go back and redo a project or restructure a road? We can't sue ourselves for the money. At least if we had that employee who made a gross mistake, we can at least go after them and make a claim against their professional liability policy. And I guess I just asked Ms. Wynn the same question. Is that obviously when you're in private practice and you're practicing as an attorney, most attorneys carry some sort of professional liability. So I just wanted to know, is that something practical that we should even look into as an organization? Because I don't want to, be forced with paying for somebody's mistake 4 and 5 years later, and the employee may not even be there, when ultimately it's going to be the city's responsibility. But as you know, the purpose of insurance is to share and spread the risk. And that's all I'm doing. I just don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we're stuck looking at something years later and it's more costly than we imagined.
And that's definitely something that we can look at to see if it actually does save costs.
Thank you.
Or it saves money.
That's all I have.
Yes, understood.
Any other comments, questions? Commissioners, council people, Miller, Anderson, or Lanier, do you have any comments, questions, or concerns?
No, I do not.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council authorize Arthur J. Gallagher and Company, Miami, to provide a comprehensive self-insurance package for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. If you're in favor, please vote yes. If not, please vote no. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lanier?
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Councilperson Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Pro Tem Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes. That passes by a vote of 5-0. Item number 10.
Thank you.
Resolution number 12520, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, adopting a reasonable application fee for submission of an unsolicited public-private partnership proposal pursuant to Section 255.065 Florida statutes and any subsequent solicited proposals by the city, providing for an effective date and for other purposes. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have public comment on this item.
Thank you. Would someone care to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Would someone second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the resolution authorizing fees for unsolicited and solicited proposals for public-private partnerships. Do we have a presentation, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. This item before you this evening is to establish a policy whereby if the city is to receive a solicitation and unsolicited proposal, that there's a process and a mechanism in place to allow for the city to review that proposal. Pursuant to Florida State Statutes 255-065, the statute provides for local government entities to be able to entertain unsolicited proposal if it is deemed to provide a public benefit or a public need. Certain things such as facilities, mass transit, vehicle parking, improvements to equipments, buildings, even water and wastewater infrastructure and projects that a government entity would consider. The City of Riviera Beach has no particular policy in place, so if we receive an unsolicited proposal in which we have in the past, consultants have provided a check for the purposes of doing a review of the proposal. That particular proposal was provided back to the proposer as it was insignificant or insufficient with regards to the items contained to be considered a bona fide proposal. So what we're requesting as part of this particular policy is to allow for a fee of $25,000 in the event that the city does receive a unsolicited proposal. If an unsolicited proposal is received, they would have to provide a $25,000 check. One of the changes that was made to the resolution that was originally put on Novus agenda and was modified this evening was consistent with the conversation that I had with Councilman Lawson during agenda review, that if a firm puts forward that $25,000 check, that there is an invoice or a anticipated cost for the services that would be provided. The $25,000 would be utilized for the purposes of reviewing the merits of the proposal. If it is deemed that the proposal is sufficient, then it is incumbent upon the city, and if the city is interested in moving forward with the arrangement, the city then has to go through a public solicitation process whereby it would open it up for other interested parties. They too would have to provide the $25,000 for the purposes of reviewing their solicitation. Once that process is complete, then that item would then come before the board for authorization if it is a service that is deemed necessary after the internal review of staff as well as the external review by a subject matter expert, depending on what the particular issue is. This is something that a lot of other government entities have in place, and we know with us moving forward on multiple projects within the city of Riviera Beach, it is an important thing for us to put in place to be able to facilitate that in the event that it does happen. So staff has done some research on this and thinks that this policy is definitely needed, and staff recommends approval recommends approval of the ordinance or the resolution that's before you this evening.
Thank you. You said we had public comments, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Madam Chair. J.B. Dixon.
I just need to respond to some, again, egregiously incorrect information that was given on.
You need to confine your comments to the topic on the agenda.
Well, I wish other people would.
Well, I'm sorry, but.
Okay, because I didn't have a PAC, because there's no PAC is registered because there wasn't a PAC. It was a political committee, and it is registered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments, Madam Clerk?
No, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Comments or questions from the council? Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Evans, 25,000. You ran down a list of this statute providing for various. Can you give me that list again? And I don't know if I've seen that in the memo, but I'm looking at. I guess I was.
Yes, certainly.
Is that in your memo?
Yes, sir. That is in the memorandum.
Well, I guess I have the addition sheet. I don't have the actual memo, but okay. Is there any rhyme or reason as to the 25,000?
Based on the research that staff conducted and looking at other municipalities, that was the number that we found very consistent across the board.
Okay. That's all I have. I'm going to jump to the memo. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Lawson? Look like you're about to.
Yes, and Mr. Evans, thank you for the updates and also the memo, the notice and the fees, just getting the outline. And this is just a point of reference for possibly my colleagues if we can make some additional time, because a lot of the questions and concerns with this item I was able to spend during my agenda review. So if my colleagues are able to make the time during their week, I know that we already take on a lot already, but if they can make that time, we can expedite these meetings just a little bit, because Mr. Evans was able to review and all the concerns and questions that I had during the agenda review, which only took me about 30 minutes. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any comments from council members Lanier or Miller Anderson?
No, I have none.
I have none. Neither do I.
One last question.
Mr. McCoy, you're recognized.
Okay. So, Mr. Evans, the qualifying projects that you reference are solely the ones that are limited to what's in the statute?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? It has been moved and seconded that council approve the resolution authorizing fees for unsolicited and solicited proposals for public-private partnerships. If you're in favor, vote yes. If not, vote no. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier.
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy.
Yes.
Pro Tem Lawson.
Yes.
Chair Votel.
Yes. That motion passes with a vote of 5-0. Thank you. We have item number 12, discussion of invitation.
Discussion of invitation to negotiate for design, build, finance. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
Mr. City Manager, do we have
Madam Chair, members of the board, if I can ask for Chief Kurd to come before you this evening to speak briefly with regards to Fire Station 88 and the process and where we are today as it relates to Fire Station 88, and then I will get into the intent to negotiate item that's before you this evening. Chief Kurd.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Council, Mayor. So I just want to kind of bring everybody up to speed on where we've been, where we're at, and what our intent is. We do understand that Fire Station 88 was to be relocated at Barracuda Bay, 1663 West Blue Heron. We worked in a design process with an architect, and we were very close to completion of that task when we realized that we had some concerns with the lease at the VA for Fire Station 89. So looking at the next 50 years and looking at properties that were available on the Military Trail Corridor, there's very few pieces of property that are left that are reasonably priced. So then staff got together, we put together a really good team, we looked at some of the different options, and we talked about what would be the feasibility of combining both of those stations, should the VA choose not to renew that lease agreement. So this is where the Walgreens property came about and where the idea was born. So some of the factors we took into consideration is obviously the combination of, or the combining of two stations, station number 88 and 89. But we also looked at the tactical location for that station. We feel that that is a better tactical location. We've done some response time analysis, and while it isn't significant, it will provide a general overall reduction in our response time. Currently, this property is also going to be a multi-use property. It's going to provide for administrative offices while we're looking to rebuild City Hall in the near future, and it's also going to provide a city operations center that we're going to be able to utilize during hurricane season. Some of the features of the stations, as you've seen in some of the backup, is we're finally going to have private sleeping quarters where individuals can sleep in private. There's going to be some systems in place to ease some of the physiological and psychological stresses associated with sleep deprivation, being woken up in the middle of the night, and basically within 7 minutes stepping inside of a structure fire from a dead sleep. So there are a lot of different concepts that are going to be built in to help our firefighters deal with some of those challenges. There's also a very unique design concept going into this station called the hot zone concept. This is for firefighter decontamination. And while a lot of this was focused around cancer, COVID has changed our world. There is now decontamination associated when running COVID-related calls, so we can see what the trends are looking like and what a station should look like for the next 50 years. We're going to obviously have private showering facilities for both males and females, which we currently don't have. And there's going to be a lot of training elements incorporated into this station. One of the things that we couldn't do at the original site, we'll reference, is the Barracuda Bay property. We are seeing a significant decrease in the number of fire calls in Riviera Beach. However, EMS calls are off the charts. This is one of our busiest years in call response in Riviera Beach history. So one of the things we need to do is better train our firefighters in firefighting, because we're not getting the on-the-job training that we saw 10, 15, 20 years ago when structure fires were more prevalent, and this station's going to have some very unique elements with that. This station's also going to provide a community exam room for health screenings and the potential for vaccines. We see now with this closed pod system with COVID vaccines, we do not have a facility in Riviera Beach, which is basically like your high school clinic. It's going to have a bed, it's going to have a bathroom in there where we can use it to do some community outreach events, health screenings, and vaccinations should the need arise in the future. This facility is also going to transform itself, what it's being built for, and then what it'll be used for. Again, its long-term plan is a combination of 2 stations, should the VA not agree to lease the property. But we're also going to see this station grow in the next 50 years. I don't think you all realize what's happened in the fire service in the last 50 years. It's kind of not what you do. But we were just a fire department 50 years ago. There was no such thing as EMS. All we did was fire. We didn't have fire inspectors and prevention. We now have that. We had EMS, which was added into the system in the 80s and 90s. And just that short time ago, we didn't even use gloves on EMS calls. So we can see hazmat, we can see dive rescue, we see now EMS has become ALS. Basically, our ambulances or our rescue trucks are mini hospitals or emergency rooms on wheels. So we definitely want to make sure that when we build this station, that it's going to be able to accommodate what the next 50 years is going to look like in the fire service. It's going to provide opportunities for us to enter into programs called community paramedicine. You're going to be hearing me coming back and talking a little bit more about community paramedicine. This is when our residents are released from the hospital, our medics go to that house, talk to that patient, make sure they filled their prescriptions, explain their prescriptions to them, and try to prevent them from going back into the hospital due to lack of resources or understanding about what their condition is. Because hospitals will just move them right along. I mean, they just kind of have that turning wheel. So we are asking for council to look at this intent to negotiate in this partnership where we're looking at a design, build, finance. We have to get a station up off the ground. My firefighters are using bathrooms in a porta potty behind a building that was a makeshift mechanic shop. So I need council support on this. I know there's going to be a lot of questions and concerns, but we need to look at defining what the next 50 years is like. And with Ms. McBride, Ms. Pemsel, Mr. Bailey, Ms. Wynn, and Ms. Mutombo have been helping out a ton out of legal. We think we are at the point now where you all need to make a decision on where fire rescue is in the next 50 years.
Madam Chair?
You're recognized.
Chief Kerr, just had a quick question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
When you discussed response times, if possibly bringing 88 and 89 into one major station, is that something that we reviewed, and is that a possibility? Still, at the new location on the corner of Congress Blue Heron, I know we had discussions about possibly positioning emergency response vehicles throughout the city to respond to those response times and to lower those response times if we just confine those 2 stations into one. Is that still a possibility, or how would that look?
Tactically, it's not the best operation. We are very spread out very well along the Riviera Beach corridor. However, our response times are well below anybody's average in Palm Beach County. We try to average an under 6-minute response time. From the time somebody picks up the phone, within 6 minutes, 911's at their door. Those numbers are very difficult to achieve. We will lose some time if the VA opts to not renew that lease. We have to take into account cost, time, and time is money in the fire service. And we feel, looking at the statistical data and the analysis that we did, we will see an increase in time to our Western community, but it will not be an unacceptable increase. It'll still be within the standards set forth by the NFPA. We also are working with DOT in Palm Beach County on preemption and priority lighting down the Blue Heron corridor. So when our tones go off, every light turns green all the way out to Military Trail, which we think will alleviate some of those concerns. While not completely, it'll help.
Well, I do pride our police and fire on being above standard and always consistently being above standard. So standard is not acceptable for the city of Riviera Beach. So whatever it takes for us to stay above the fray and keep our numbers at the lowest response possible within our fire department, that's what we're going to petition for on this diet.
Understood. And I just want to make it clear, with the VA property, Ms. McBride has worked with teams now in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
There is still a possibility that station is going to be available to us, which will then shift our plan for what Station 88 is and how it's going to serve the community in the future. So I don't want to make it sound like Station 89 is off the table.
Right.
But there are just some decisions that got to be made in Washington, D.C. that are well above any of our control.
And just my concern, just a continuation, is with Station 88 and the development, I want to see that shovel in the ground within the next few months. I want to see that erected within the next, by 2021, early 2022. So that's very feasible for us to not wait on the VA, not wait on Washington. We have to make these decisions now, because whatever we build and put in the ground is going to be completed within the next 12 months. With this council and the dais and the support you have, we are going to get you this new station, as many stations up and running as possible. But we need to be prepared with however we're going to operate for our Western communities, because we have 200-300 new single families coming up right there on the corner of Blue Heron and Broadway. I believe Lennar Homes is working over there in that community. And whatever additional development happens, we don't want any times to be average within our community. So whatever response rates or response times we can address, whether it's positioning vehicles throughout the communities, whether it's just using 88 as a big house and being able to sustain, but figuring out how we can make it work, whether we have that location or we do not. And if we do not have 89, just making sure that we keep those times above average.
And we do feel
Western
that
community.
this design build finance is the most feasible, cost-effective, and timely way to get this station up off the ground, looking at all of the different options. You know, staff has really put a lot of time into, you know, exploring this option and making sure that it's successful.
Yeah, during the timelines was my biggest concerns, the cost and addressing what impact it would have to the residents. But that's part of the agenda review. I'm sure Mr. Evans and staff will go over that now. But I'm excited about this program because I think that we can get some buildings erected quickly. But let's hear a little bit more about it. Thank you, Chief.
Madam Chair, if I may
Yes.
just add on to the presentation. So the intent behind tonight's presentation is to get support from the board to proceed forward with the intent to negotiate. This is a solicitation tool that is allowed for in statute, and basically it provides for a truncated timeline for us to effectively move forward with the construction of our facilities. We as a city have done significant research with regards to what is the quickest, most effective way to deliver these facilities. And in the past, we have spent $2.5 million since 2012 in designing facilities that never come out of the ground. We put $1.1 million in the 13th Street Public Works Police Department, $900,000 in Station 88, $150,000 for the library, and for the Public Works site, $350,000. So we have spent a lot of money doing the traditional design, bid, and then effectively build. This particular process in its entirety, the traditional process that we have utilized, will take about 2 years. The design, bid, finance operation, or design, build, finance option truncates that timeline to where we conceivably believe that with the solicitation being out there for a period of 75 days, that within probably, I would say 60 days from us receiving those proposals, that we can get the items before the board to effectively rank the firms for us to begin the negotiation process. And then once the contract is inked, within 6 months, we believe that we can have shovels in the ground and moving vertical as it relates to the construction. One of the important parts about it, too, is the finance element. Right now, we anticipate the cost for Fire Station 88 to be anywhere between $9 to $13 million. We have $9 million budgeted. That's cash that's on hand. We then would have to find the additional capital to fund it, and then that's $13 million that's gone. If we look at the finance model, all the risks are shifted over to our partners. They design it, they construct it, and we show up and we accept the facility and we enter into a lease payment. No different than if you were to buy a home and the bank holds the mortgage, this entity would hold the lease and we would pay a lease payment for 30 years. Additionally, there is a benefit because they can move a lot quicker. We then have a situation where the $9 million of capital that is currently allocated can be reappropriated for other capital projects, whether it's property acquisition for economic development or other things. Additionally, it then puts us to look at the fire assessment through a different prism because you're utilizing other monies to effectively bring this fire station to fruition. Additionally, the ITN is going to be structured that if the arrangement and the relationship is successful and 6 months into the construction process, the board says we want to move forward with the construction of Fire Station 86 and 87, you can do that with this contract. And so it's a competitive solicitation process. It allows for us to move extremely fast. And one of the things that is important to note that we, as the project sponsor, have the opportunity to ensure local participation and that we create growth and wealth and all the things that the board has said since their election. And so we believe that this mechanism gives us the opportunity to bring these projects to bear a lot quicker. And if anyone and all the staff that did attend the virtual P3 seminar can attest that this is the model that they said you should be doing or you should have considered, because you're utilizing outside capital for the purposes of facilitating them. We still have a say in local participation, who's involved in the project, etc. So we don't abrogate any authority to any other partner. We set the tone as it relates to the expectation. We are still the client and the end user. And the reason why it's a favorable financing structure is no municipality is going to walk away from a fire station or municipal facilities. These are facilities that are built for 50 years. So we wanted to bring this item to the board ultimately to get your support so we can move forward with the solicitation. Staff has the ability to go ahead and put this item on the street, but in the spirit of transparency, and since this is profoundly different, we wanted to get the board's initial support in moving forward and then realize that you do get multiple bites at this apple. It comes back to you to hear from the 3 teams that are established that would be competing, the top 3. Then after you select who the #1 ranked firm is, we then get into negotiations, and then the contract comes back for ratification. And then that's when the process starts. So there are multiple opportunities that if the board has any concerns or any heartburns, that we can be able to address those accordingly. If you look at the other process, the design build process, you're still looking at a normal design, and I had a discussion with Mr. Sherman, just for the needs and assessment for the library that was supposed to be constructed, took about 9 months. And that was before they got to architectural drawings that you can go out to bid. So this will allow for us to get the guaranteed maximum price, the GMP, probably within 3 months of the relationship, because it's a integrated process with the architect, the engineer, and the construction firm and the financing team that work in unison. And we believe that if this ITN is able to move forward, that we can deliver and exceed the expectations of the community and the board, because we think that based on the research and how we've seen this model work in other municipalities, that this is the preferred approach. So at this time, staff is requesting support from the board to move forward with issuing the intent to negotiate for Fire Station 88 to be posted either January 3rd or 4th, and staff is prepared to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the board? Mr. McCoy, you're recognized.
Reverend Evans was very long-winded. I was trying to ask Chief Kurt. I think I forgot what I was going to ask.
That's all right.
Next thing will be
Madam Chair.
Thank you. You did answer a couple questions. Estimated cost $9 to $13 million. I was looking at, and I got some help from the chief. I was looking to see when we authorized the purchase, and it was $2.4 million, and it was August, correct? I did see the backup.
It was July.
July?
July 15th is when it came to council the first time.
Okay, so, Mr. Evans, in our budget right now, I looked, the one you sent us on Friday, the link doesn't work, but I found it on the website. I see that we have in our 21 budget, $3 million for the rebuild of Station 88. Did that, help me understand, what was, like, did we use the $2.4 million? Is that the purchase price, or is that something separate? Is the rebuild price separate?
Mr. Sherman, if you can provide some information as far as the different funds that are being utilized for the purposes of Fire Station 88. So we did put together some different funds from different projects. Also, if this project does serve as the EOC, it does provide us the opportunity to tap into the major disaster fund as well.
Come on, Mr. Evans. Let me at least ask that question. I already got the answer, because I already looked to see we had $6.1 million in there, and I was trying to figure out, could we pool it together, but I think they're directing us that there's public comment, so.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's do public comment and then continue our
I
discussion.
was just reminding you
Yes,
all that we
thank
have a public comment.
Go ahead.
J.B. Dixon.
Oh, she passes. Thank you.
That's
Good.
it.
Go ahead. Any other questions from council?
Yeah, I got a couple, but I want to know, the $3 million that's in the budget, is that wasn't the purchase price?
No, that was not the purchase price.
Okay, because I see it says in our capital improvement plan, we had $3 million set aside for 2021 budget for the rebuild of District 88. And if I can, I think I got the exact page, and I guess I'm trying to put together, it really sounds good what you're saying on paper, but I don't want to commit to that until I understand a few other things. Obviously, I did go and pull the disaster fund. I was going to ask about our 1 cent sales surtax balance. I was going to ask, it was mentioned, so earlier, it was mentioned about what's going to happen in Tallahassee with the lease of the VA property, which also made me think about what are we doing about our legislative priorities, both on the state and federal level. That's something that we need to start working on if there's any dollars. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I spent time last month in Tallahassee, and I think our representative here, Ms. Caruso, is well, actually, he's not a ranking member. He's in House Administration on one of the appropriations committees. And obviously, there's this new committee related to pandemic and emergency response, and if there's any appropriation dollars that we can draw down from the legislature. So I wanted to have a comprehensive conversation before we commit on doing a design build finance, which I've never heard of before, and it's perhaps because I'm not in the industry, but it sounds good to say that we can get a firm that can come in here and do all of this, can give us a design, a bill, and then finance it. That in itself sounds like a really perfect situation, but there are a number of questions that I have in response to that. One of which is, I don't know, most of the design builds are done by local architects and CMs at risk, right? But this, I don't know any kind of local architects or CMs or even body in the state that I know of. Well, I can't say the state. It's just not common that you'll hear of this. So this has to be some new concept where you can find one person to design it, build it, and finance it.
Well, Madam Chair, if I may, to your point, Councilman, what they do is they build the teams. So they will come with teams, and this team has worked together, or it's a team that's assembled for the purposes of facilitating those particular types of arrangements. So they will have an architect firm that they work, but you won't find a situation where one particular huge conglomerate will come and be able to do it all. So it's teams that they've formulated through relationships on other particular projects.
Okay, follow up.
Go ahead.
So, my idea when I wrote all my notes, and I think you pretty much you and Chief already killed everything I wanted to say, but, is this the best option? I mean, if we have monies that we pull from the disaster fund, the 1 cent sales surtax, the $3 million that's set aside in the budget, even if we were to accelerate some of the, or even not even, I guess, bring forth some of the monies that we have set aside for further capital projects, because it seems that we're putting in our capital improvement plan every year all of these projects, and we're barely even getting the half of them. So there's monies there, right? And for whatever reason, we get community block grant dollars, and then that then covers monies that would have come out of the general fund. I'm not so sold on this whole finance portion, because I don't want to be paying through the nose for financing if we have dollars and resources between various funds that we can pool together. And before we do that, I mean, we need to really, because this is a concept that I, at least in my experience, have not seen before, the financing component, that we understand what that means. Because, I mean, we even have the option to go out to do I guess it's general purpose bonding or something like that, and send it to a referendum. But if that's a better and more, I guess, less expensive option for the city in terms of interest and the cost of financing this over the years, you know, I want to know those scenarios as opposed to just saying, let's go this option. Lastly, if I can just say this last point is, what assurances do we have when we go to a firm that, obviously, I don't know that this even happens here locally, but that we're going to have locals that's going to be here doing the work. So those are my concerns, because, you know, as many times as we've heard this, it never really happens. You know, we get firms from, you know, God knows where. And if this is really a concept that they're driving, I'm sure they have price points as to what makes it profitable for them. You know, we're going to lease that land to them for 30 years. Yeah, but at what cost? We've already paid $2 million. If we're talking about they're going to put in $13 million worth of construction, you can say this is a $15 million investment. We owe 13 on it. I mean, at 30 years, what's the interest? How much do we pay? It just seems like there's enough money in our coffers and within our reach that I'm not exactly sure that I like the whole finance portion. And, you know, the idea of bringing someone to the table to have the discussion is good, but I don't want to do this without first, you know, analyzing all the other options that's available for us. Because, you know, when we say this, don't give people the impression that we don't have the money, because we were certainly set to go ahead and do, you know, the rebuild of 88 next to Barracuda Bay. Obviously, we did purchase this property, so that set us back, you know, $2.4 million. But I just really feel comfortable if we have the other options, as opposed to saying this new concept, this is where we're going.
Madam Chair, if I may, and Mr. Sherman, if you're ready to come up, as Mr. Sherman approaches, we do have money set aside and have access to move forward with Station 88, but then I have no other monies for any other capital projects related to fire service. And so if we're able to utilize this mechanism, it provides the opportunity to effectively concurrently move forward with the construction of other facilities. Because if we do it based on our traditional approach, we will, by the time we finish building all our facilities, we'll be rebuilding Fire Station 88, the first facility we started with. And so this provides a quicker mechanism for us to bring it to market. And Mr. Sherman, if you can speak to the financing side and the financing funds for Fire Station 88 and where they're put together from.
Yeah, and I hope you don't mind me standing up here. I have a hard time hearing if I sit behind that glass. So within the current budget, we have all cash, and this is coming from the FPL dollars, of $7.6 million in place. It's not all in the current year, but we have $7.6 million for the fire station, which obviously will go over a couple of years. Now, we were carrying $10 million. We just spent 2.4 on the property. We closed in September. So right now we're at $7.6 million, okay? Keep in mind, the $10 million was putting it on city land and a smaller station with 3 bays. Now we're looking at 4 bays. We're looking at putting some EOC space and office space in. It's going to be a much larger, broader station than we were contemplating when we had the $10 million. So what we're looking at when we get these numbers, a couple of things. One, we will have to get the bids segregated so we can determine what is actually the EMS component. Should we get the fire fee adopted, and what the component is that really is EOC related, so we can possibly use some of the dollars that we have in the the fund that we've set aside for the, emergency purposes. So that'll all come into place. Now, I tend to agree with you on the financing side. The advantage of using the design build finance is you can get started right away, okay? For us to go to market and borrow $10 million for one station and then maybe $10 million for, Station 87 down the road and $10 million for 86 down the road, we can get these stations up and running. What we will put into the agreements, though, is that we have the ability to take those financings out at any point, or certainly at certain target dates. So if we want to, in essence, refinance it down the road, because I will tell you that I do think that we can, using tax-exempt financing, we can be financing that any private sector is going to bring to the table. They will get tax-exempt, but I think, again, us going to the market, we would be able to do better. But we can't do it as quickly. So to me, it's see what their offers are, see how they come in, get the process moving, and again, at any point along the way, if we want to take them out as the financing portion, we would certainly have the ability to do that.
Okay, so, Madam Chair, if I can follow up. So when you say get started right away, and I'm only asking this because I don't know, so do they have like a, Chief, if you would know this answer, do they have like a template of these stations ready to build? Is that how I understand this?
The relationship works is they're going to go and get to, they're working in unison with the contractor as well as the architect. So they're going to get to the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price, a lot quicker, and they're not going to need 100% plans to do so because they've done it. They know, okay, square footage, they've done fire stations, they've done municipal facilities, and they're able to take some of the risk. Versus in our situation, if we were to do it, we would get to 100% plans, then we end up bidding it, and then we find out, and we've done this multiple times, every project we've gone to 100% plans and put it out, comes back $1.5 million over when the architect designed it, and then you're doing value engineering to try to get it to a point. So the process that we have utilized in the past hasn't been successful, but it's the integration that they have with the team that they're able to get to that number and get to that endpoint a lot quicker than we can based on, the model that they have in place.
And if I can add one other thing to that, and it's been 30 years since I've done taxes, but the fact that they're going to actually own the facility, there are tax benefits to them, which they can pass through the process, to the municipalities, which again helps us in our lease payments. So again, if they can get the tax-exempt financing, they can get tax write-offs, they'll do accelerated depreciation. They'll take all those benefits as quickly as they can. And then part of the issue with the negotiations is trying to get as much of that passed through to the city as possible.
Okay. And is there and I guess I didn't get the notification till the day before about the P3 conferences. This where you guys shared this? Because I think I got it from Councilman Lawson's assistant.
Yes.
Is that what was discussed?
That's part of it.
And this is happening in public safety facilities?
It's happening on all government facilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Lawson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Evans, just a quick series of questions that we've addressed. The time frame, design bill versus design bill finance versus design bid bill. Time frame on this design bid finance for us to kind of get some shovels in the ground. The time frame we discussed was about 4 to 6 months versus our traditional way of design bid, which is about 12 plus months, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
So we could essentially have shovels in the ground within the next 4 to 6 months.
After we get the item before the board to get approval, we should have a little bit of time to get the contracts, and then they can move pretty quickly because they're going to be moving concurrently while we're going through that process.
Okay, design costs, we're going to get a proposal, if we move forward with giving direction of bringing this to us as a resolution. Design costs estimate, from your understanding and conversations, researching this project, if we put it out to bid, our cost could be anywhere between 10 and 12 million, and the cost for this possible program is around the same, between 10 and 12 million, if that's correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The staffing that would work with this program, this invitation to negotiate, that would be our internal staff. So we would have our police chief, our fire chief, our internal staff working with this organization to be part of the build-out team with getting it designed, getting the process, and facilitating this process, if that's correct.
That is correct, and there would probably be assistance that's necessary from legal as well as our financial consultant to assist on the structure of the deal.
Okay. And then also, Councilman McCoy, a lot of the concerns that you addressed today, I had the exact same questions. And colleagues, that's why I'm going to ask again, if we could all just take 20 to 30 minutes just to speak with Mr. Evans during the week, to have these conversations with him, because I had the exact same conversations. I've served as a correspondent lender and mortgage broker for 10 years. I've worked within the real estate business and the mortgage business. So the finance was my biggest concern. But the conversations that we've had and we addressed was something that was going to be brought back to the table to discuss the exact costs and what the impact is going to be to our residents over the next 20 to 30 years. How much additional money we'd be paying in finance fees versus just taking the money and getting the funding. Mr. Sherman addressed some of the concerns with the tax barriers that we have, and also the percentage, so the interest rates we'll talk about when they bring it back to the table with proposals. Of course, when we put the invitation to negotiate a design, they'll come back with the proposal amount and the interest rates and what our costs would be. So if we go out and get bonding in layman's terms, and we are paying right now $10 million versus financing this, is that cost going to be 12, 13 million? What's going to be total cost over that 30-year period? And is that going to be beneficial to free up some capital to allow for us to do additional projects? So those are some of the concerns that we have. I've already addressed with Mr. Evans that will be brought back to the table. But just simplifying it in layman's terms so we can say what is going to be our cost today, what's going to be our cost over the next 10, 20 years, and what are our grandkids going to be impacted with. So that's what we want to see when this comes back to us, so we can know the exact impact on the residents, what's the total cost of the project, and the time frames, because the time frame is the biggest thing. That fortune cookie said borrowed time. I'm on borrowed time. Our entire council's on borrowed time. And then the next council will be here. And the next council will be here and continue to lead this community. But as of right now, we need to see some progress. And the biggest and best way I see is by expediting this. Visiting the P3 conference this year, last year, I saw a lot of the potential that we can work with the private sector. I saw the benefit and the impact of design, build, of this financing option. Working within my field, I've seen using other money to be able to do and establish certain growth and development. So I'm in support of this, Mr. Evans. I just want to get some additional information, like Councilman McCoy said, and move forward with getting everything out and getting moving forward with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Lanier or Councilwoman Miller-Anderson, do you have any comments or questions?
No, this is Councilwoman Lanier. I don't have any questions. I too, as Mr. Lawson, I have weekly meetings with Mr. Evans to hash out some of the items on the agenda.
Thank you. Councilwoman Miller-Anderson?
No, I do not. Thank you. I've already been briefed.
I'll say something first, and I'll go to Mr. McCoy. I've been to at least 3 P3 conferences since I was elected, and I have learned so much in that time about how effective this kind of a program can be. And it's used all over the country. It's amazing how governments have taken on and taken hold of this because it reduces the risk to us. It transfers the risk, I should say. And I think that above all else, the reason for doing this is that our firefighters deserve the best, and they deserve to have it as soon as we can get it to them. It's been too long. I remember visiting the fire station my first week in office and thinking, oh my God, we've got to do something about this. So I am completely in favor of this. I want us to move forward as quickly as we possibly can and get this thing done. Mr. McCoy, you had a question or a concern?
I just want to know, Chief, is something going on over there? Your department using it? Because I know I've seen a lot of fire apparatuses there. I think this week, or maybe.
Where's that at Walgreens?
Yeah.
We're actually using that facility for training. We're doing large area search. We're doing
Okay.
rope rescue. We got some different training opportunities.
There's no intention of recycling that place or using
By the
it?
time we're done training in it, you're not going to be able to
Okay.
recycle it.
Okay, well, I was trying to see if Councilman Lawson wanted,
Why don't you come on out and do some training with us?
well, I thought maybe Councilman Lawson wanted to lease it out for a party venue or something.
Yes.
Mr. Rafiki.
That ain't me.
Would someone like to make a motion that we recommend to administration that we move forward with the invitation to negotiate for design bill finance for the fire rescue services facilities?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that we ask administration to move forward with the invitation to negotiate for design bill finance of the fire rescue services facilities. If you're in favor, vote yes. If not, vote no. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Councilperson Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier?
Yes.
Pro Tem Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes. Thank you. That vote is 5-0, and it is approved.
Our firefighters, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Close. Do we have discussion by City Manager?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just wanted to update the board concerning Marina Phase 2. I did provide a memorandum to the board later part of today, early afternoon, with respect to the conversation that we had with APD and TESRA. We had a discussion with them on Friday, December 11th, and we talked with them about 16 questions that they proffered to staff. And this was at the request of CRA staff to really get to the meat and potatoes of what some of the questions were that were still outstanding. Based on the initial review and discussion as it relates to the questions, staff thinks it's pertinent that we move forward with setting up a joint discussion with the development team and the elected officials to get clarity on the 16 questions that were provided in the memorandum. Additionally, we did do a deeper dive into the agreement that the town of Lake Park had with its consultant firm. And even though the RFP was written very broadly, when we look at the contract, which would be the mechanism that would facilitate us looking to utilize a piggyback bid or solicitation, it is so granular and specific to the town of Lake Park that it's staff's recommendation that we not utilize that document, and that if we are to get a financial consultant to look at the firm's ability to bring the project to fruition, that we look to see if it's something that's under the $25,000 threshold, or we would have to go through a competitive solicitation process. So based on the discussions that were had, I think it is important that we look to extend that 30-day period and allow for a more fluid time frame, because there is a lot of work that needs to be done, especially direction provided by the board to assist APD and TESRA in providing the necessary information for a financial consultant to review. The other side of it is, in the conversations that we had with the developers, is that there was interest in looking at, and their primary proposal was that each element to be reviewed individually to look at their financial strength to go ahead and bring each element to the market, not to look at the firm's ability in totality to be able to address the $200 million capital project, because that is profoundly different, and of course that's a heavier lift. So staff would need additional direction from the board as to how you would like for that analysis to be looked at. So in summation, we do want to see if the board is amenable to a more flexible timeline, if the board is amenable to having a joint conversation with the development group, and then staff will continue to look for a consultant that could facilitate a financial review. And if it's a financial review on each element, it would be profoundly different than a financial review on the overall viability of the particular project. So that was enumerated in the memorandum, but realistically, I know that it was supposed to come back to the CRA board at the January 9th meeting, and based on all the nuances associated with this particular project and the research that staff has done, it's staff's recommendation that we grant a longer time frame, and I can provide probably more specificities to the board at your first regular meeting of the CRA board, but we did extend the agreement out to the 9th, and conceivably there's no way that we can be able to have a financial review done by that time, especially with the holidays and consultants already having their book of work for the remaining part of this year already secured. So staff is just requesting direction on this particular matter, and then we will proceed forward accordingly.
So are you looking specifically for direction from us as to extension of the timeline?
That is the only item where the board did officially take action. And so I wanted to make sure that that January 9th, that was addressed, and there's some ability for us to move that timeline. And I'll be able to give you a better timeline once staff looks for additional consultants that can provide the service, or if we have to go through an all-out competitive solicitation process.
So are you looking for us to determine a date, or are you looking for us to leave it open-ended? Are you looking for us to say, yes, we can you can extend the timeline to provide you with sufficient time to do the tasks that you need to do?
Basically, Madam Chair, yes, and to move away from that January 9th deadline that was placed on the table.
Would someone care to make a motion that we allow for city administration to have additional time to work on this project?
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we provide city administration with additional time for this project. Did you have a comment or concern, Councilwoman Lanier Anderson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do have a concern. I want to know, so I'm a bit confused. If we are looking for another financial consultant to review the initial proposal, why would we be having a conversation with the developers if their proposal has already been submitted? I thought that it was a two-step process. The developers send in a proposal, they accepted the proposal. Now it comes to where we are looking to have a financial consultant to ensure that the developer can sustain financially the project. I don't understand where or why we would have to have a conversation with them until we know that they are financially sound to do the deal.
Mr. City Manager.
Madam Chair, if I may, the intent behind the conversation is there are certain questions that they posed that are more policy-related items, and staff cannot provide an answer to that without direction from the board, nor did we want to assume the position of the board based on the last conversation. And so that is why the opportunity to have the discussion was offered as a potential solution, because based on those questions, it will affect the items and the information that is provided to the consultant to review their financial capabilities.
Madam Chair?
Yes, you're recognized.
Does that conversation that we have in terms of the policy questions, does that fundamentally change the nature of the proposal that was submitted, or change the nature of the original RFP that was put out?
Mr. City Manager, you're recognized.
As far as I don't think it changes the proposal. I think it provides additional clarity with regards to their proposal. And I think they're looking for direction from the board if they're in favor of the sequencing of the project and looking at it specifically based on each element. And so I think the nuances of the project are still the same. Their development pattern is still the same. They are just asking for clarity based on the 16 questions that are enumerated in the memorandum.
And I understand that, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I
You're
understand that,
recognized.
but I just want to make sure that even I've seen some of the questions that have been asked, and when I look at the questions, those are some of the things that was not in the original RFP that they responded to. So I just would like to get some understanding of making sure that whatever direction that the board goes and however they pursue this option, that it does not fundamentally change the original RFP and the original proposal that was submitted. Because if that's the case, if anything changes between the RFP and the proposal, then it becomes a situation where we have basically changed the game in the middle and not open it back up to other developers to be able to compete. So I just want to have some assurance that the information that is being requested, the direction that the board goes in is in the guidelines of the original RFP and the original proposal.
Madam Chair, if I may, I can ask for the CRA attorney to give us an opinion on that and provide it to the board.
Thank you.
I would like an outside opinion. I just want to make sure, because see, what happens is if we are pursuing this option as a board and this proposal is fundamentally changed from the original RFP, then we are doing the city a disservice in not starting over again, basically, and putting it back out. But if we are going to pursue this option, I want to be very clear, and I want to have a legal assurance that the direction that we are going does not change fundamentally the proposal or the original RFP.
Mr. City Manager?
If it's the pleasure of the board, we can do that.
I'm not sure I would like to spend any additional legal money to get, go ahead, Mr. McCoy, you're recognized.
Mr. Evans, can you clarify the points of these, was it 16 questions?
Yes, sir.
It was basically to get clarification on the elements, not necessarily changing anything, I don't think. I mean, isn't that what I'm understanding? They just wanted to, I guess, piecemeal and ask individual questions about the various elements of what has already been offered and how the city intends on moving forward with that. But, I mean, I don't understand what we would need to interpret, unless...
Madam Chair?
Just a minute. He's not, Mr. McCoy hasn't finished.
I mean,
I'm
that's
sorry.
a question for the manager.
Yes, Councilman, you're correct with regards to, they're asking for clarity with regards to the elements that are contained in the actual proposal that they submitted. Their questions would be, similar things would be just clarity on the housing mix and the use of the event center and parking and some of those other elements that are all, nuances of the particular agreement. But I don't see anything that is separate and apart from my review. And I did have legal from the CRA take a look at this memorandum as well. But we don't think that, just on our initial staff review, that there's any deviations from what was already enumerated in their proposals. Just they're requesting clarity.
Madam Chair?
You're recognized.
The reason I have some pause with this is the fact that if they cannot do the project that they propose in its entirety, then we need to open up these individual elements to public competition. Individual elements do not require a master developer. Their proposal is to, their original proposal did not propose to individually develop each element. The city can do that. We don't need a master developer to develop these projects individually. What my concern is that the original proposal was to do this project in its entirety. Now we're saying that we're going to do it under individual elements, and we don't need a master developer to do that. And I just think that it needs to, if it's going to be done individually, which was not originally proposed, then we need to open it up for competition within the city, and it's an opportunity for more local participants. Because, I mean, as I said before, it's not the same. It is, the master development was to do the entire project collectively. Now you're saying that we're doing this in individual elements, and we just don't need a master developer to do that. The city can do that. That's just my concern. And as I said before, I just want to make sure that none of this is, changed from what was originally proposed. And what was originally proposed was a master developer to do the entire project.
Mr. Evans, you're recognized.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may, based on research, is that the City Place development was such as there was a master developer and each individual element was negotiated separate. And so there's different agreements and different reviews and agreements that allowed for that particular development to occur. There is, and it's important to note in any type of an arrangement like that, if element 8 is not successful or has issues, it doesn't preclude the board from saying that subsequent elements would be provided to or working with another entity. So there is still that flexibility for the board. If once we get to that phase in the agreement, that's the way in which we would structure an agreement, if that's the desire of the board, and to look at each element, that we have a situation where if the relationship is not working out, that the city does have an out and it's not binding to do that. But that's something that certainly is further down into the process. It's just that in order for the developers to provide information to be reviewed, they're asking for some additional clarity on the side of the board that's policy related prior to their final submission for review.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Lawson, you're recognized.
Mr. Evans, I know you're looking for a vote or from the dais now, but would we be able to call, I believe we have a meeting January 6th, a city meeting. Could we have a special CRA meeting just to kind of discuss this item and how we maneuver and move forward?
Yes, we can certainly do that, and that's probably when you can also, address the item for the 9th.
Correct. For the 9th, and then also Councilwoman Lanier had some concerns as well. We can just address that in a whole CRA meeting versus just trying to address it now.
So are you saying that you can wait until the 9th to get our permission to extend?
Wait till the 6th.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you can wait to, okay, fine.
I can wait till the 6th.
Would someone who made the motion care to withdraw it then?
Councilman McCoy.
Councilman McCoy.
Ms. Lanier made the motion, Mr. McCoy seconded.
Okay,
And I withdraw.
thank you. Where'd he go?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
what is happening on the 9th?
Well, the 9th was the previous deadline, and staff will not have an opportunity to get the work done by the 9th, so they've been asking for an they're asking for an extension, but we can vote on that extension on the 6th, and that gives enough time.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard you say there was a meeting on the 9th.
No, there's the meeting on the 6th, right?
Okay.
On the 6th. We're just waiting for Mr. McCoy to withdraw his, in the essence of time, why don't we go to, we can come back, can we come back to this? Yeah. Let's hear discussion by city manager.
That concludes my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Discussion by city attorney.
Yes, Madam Chair. I sent the council an email regarding the conversion therapy on minors ordinance.
Yes.
I didn't know what was your pleasure, just for the public's knowledge. There was many cities and counties adopted a prohibition on conversion therapy on minors ordinance. The city adopted one in 2016. those, two of those ordinances, the city of Boca Raton and the Palm Beach counties, were challenged, and the 11th Circuit, the federal court, struck down the bans on conversion therapy. And there's an appeal. The city of Miami is taking the lead on an amicus brief that they've asked other cities and counties to join in, and I wanted to know if it was the desire of the council that the city join in the brief, or if you don't want us to, then we won't.
Madam Chair?
You're recognized, Mr. Lawson.
I want to make a motion that we join in on the brief that's currently being presented by the Miami Council.
Thank you. Let's just dispense with the first motion, and then we can work on that one. Mr. McCoy, we have the maker of the motion to allow administration a little more time on the issue of the marina has withdrawn. Would you withdraw your second? And the goal is to meet on the 6th to discuss the extension, because the deadline is the 9th, so that will give us enough time. You just have to withdraw your second.
Okay, so.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson, could you make, I'm sorry.
I'm withdrawing my second, but I guess my question is, and I apologize, I went to the men's room. So are we going to take that back up in the first city council meeting?
Yeah, we're going to take it
Special
up on the
meeting,
6th.
Special
We're going to have a special CRA meeting on the 6th, just very briefly, to allow for us to give administration more time, to extend the deadline that now stands at the 9th, give them more time. But this will give, yes, go ahead.
But do we really need to do a special meeting? I mean, we're already discussing this in the city council meeting, so it appears that this is an item of the joint work team, so why would we need a special meeting when we can just basically give him direction in that same meeting, even though, because both elements, I mean, it's still composed under the CRA and the city. Just having another special meeting seems fruitless if we can knock it out in that same meeting. When, Ms. Wynn, because it's a joint work team, wouldn't you agree that we're just giving direction and not taking any kind of contractual, I guess we're not.
Yeah, the manager was requesting direction. However, there was a motion and a second on the floor. The maker of the motion has withdrawn her motion, and I think they just wanted you to withdraw your second.
Right,
There's
but
no
my
motion
question
on the floor.
is, why do we need to have another CRA meeting? Wouldn't that be able to be taken up in the city council meeting that we're already going to be at on the 6th? We're not taking any kind of action directing him to do anything that he can't do already. He's serving both roles. I mean, and then this is a joint agreement between the work team, which includes the city, the CRA, and then the proposal.
And
So,
I think that the suggestion was that you take it up on the 6th.
in a special CRA meeting is what I'm hearing.
Okay, well, we can figure out how to take it, at what meeting to take it up, but the point is, we need you to withdraw your second
Okay, I'll
tonight.
withdraw.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson, could you please state your motion again?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Making a motion that we join in on the suit currently filed with the Miami Council.
Thank you. Do we have a
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we join that suit. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Pro Tem Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Botel.
Yes, that motion is approved by a 5-0 vote. Thank you. City Attorney, anything else?
No,
Thank you. City Council committee reports. Anyone been on a committee lately? Anything from committee reports from Miller Anderson or Lanier? I just have a brief report on the tourism committee that I lead. We've been meeting every Tuesday with the core leadership group, and we've been meeting with the city manager on the 30th of every month. We've identified over 60 potential stakeholders that will be asked to sit on the tourism task force. Almost 40 have already responded that they will participate. We've also engaged with Palm Beach State College to participate in the initiative. We met with them today, and they approved their involvement in the project. A professor has been selected as the point person, and they will be focusing on market research and business intelligence. And just a point of information, in Riviera Beach, over $255 million in tourism is the impact, and over 2,840 direct and indirect jobs are related to tourism. So this is something we really do need to concentrate on. Council comments, starting with Mr. McCoy.
Nothing other than happy holidays, members and city staff, and also members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Evans, could you give us an update on the REI training for staff?
I believe that we are looking to, we had scheduled it for face-to-face, and then because of COVID, we postponed it, but we're looking to do a digital training. Ms. Jacob is leading that particular initiative. So I would say probably the first of the year in January, February, we'll do the digital training for staff.
Okay, I know that because of COVID, we kind of got that shut down with the REI training. So, but even with the digital, I was just kind of concerned with the same impact and same direction from that training, because it's an amazing course. So I'm not sure if it's possible to do a similar setup with social distancing with staff, same way that we host our council meetings. If we could have the barriers, if we could have a trainer come in, something that still gives them the same effect, because I'm not sure if they're going to get the same feel and effect from a virtual that they may in person, because it was very impactful for me.
I agree wholeheartedly. I've taken it 3 times now. Every time I learn something more, and it's very valuable, and I'm not sure it could be as effective virtually.
Yeah.
So-
I was actually, I know that because of COVID, we've kind of delayed the training, but I'd rather look at options of bringing it in person, especially for staff.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. We did have a conversation about that as early as this week, I believe. So we'll look at some options, and if the facilitator is okay with doing face-to-face, we can provide the venue.
Great.
Okay, and then there was also just some comments I wanted to make in reference to a post that came out. I believe Palm Beach Post referenced a term, turmoil, again. And I wrote down some stuff because I was just so frustrated to see that again, and took offense to the fact that whether it was this administration or any other administration, to have to relive that city in turmoil, or those turmoil comments. And they based the article on a decision that the council made on a 4-1 decision, and some of the concerns and issues that they saw during that meeting. And why I love working and addressing some of the concerns with the media, it seems like the Post does not reference any of the amazing progress that the city is doing on a day-to-day basis. This council is truly making strides, and our city is making strides, yet the only times that we seem to make the Palm Beach Post is when there's a concern with a consultant that was terminated. We had just left a 2-hour meeting and discussion with a joint meeting with our neighboring municipality, and that was very productive, yet the response was turmoil in our community. And I'm going to put on the record, I took offense to that. That was disrespectful to this dais, this administration, the leadership in this community, because we've been fighting day in and day out. Our police force puts their life on the line every day. Our firefighters do the same. This council serves this community and does an amazing job doing it. And I'm proud of the work that we're doing, and proud of the work that Mr. Evans and his staff is doing. So, Mr. Evans, as I spoke to you before, I really want us to continue to tell our narrative and allow for us to direct the narrative of our community, because it doesn't seem like we have the friendly ear of some of the media. And if they're not going to showcase what we're doing and the progress we're making, I need us to step our game up with showcasing it. And I do not support anything that was written in that article, nor do I agree with the concerns and sentiments of that post, because it was slated and biased, and I'm very frustrated with them. For us to make the news on that is disrespectful to the work we're doing. And my entire staff, my council should be offended by it. So, Mr. Evans, if you could please just kick up the marketing and advertising and PR work that we do for the city. One of our residents, Ms. J.B. Dixon, made some comments in reference to making sure that we showcase our city in a positive light. And I do believe that we do the very best job we can. We're not up here to agree and kumbaya every day. We're here to question some of the concerns of this city to make sure we move forward. That's why we have a 5-member council and a mayor. So I'm not going to continue to sit by and allow for anybody to dictate and tell a story when we can tell our own story. So, Mr. Evans, if you could please just make sure that we're continuing to tell our story. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lanier?
Yes, I just wanted to address the council and my adamant way of making sure that people stay safe during this pandemic. Every Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 4, Jay's Ministry offers free COVID testing. The city offers COVID testing Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 4, and on Friday from 1 to 4. So people need to get tested. I also want to announce that the city is showcasing the holiday of Kwanzaa at the Marina starting December 26th, which is the first day of Kwanzaa. I think that, you know, because of the disagreements that we have at this council, I think that there's a way that, you know, we speak to each other and talk to each other. My father told me that if two people agree on the same thing all the time, then one of them is not needed. So we understand that there's going to be some disagreements. There's going to be some, you know, not meeting of the minds, but we also understand that this is a professional environment and that we address each other as such.
Thank you. Councilwoman Miller Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, I know unfortunately we weren't able to do the video for our first annual Light Up Riviera Beach Holiday Decorating Contest, but I do want to remind the residents to please go on to the city's website and register. We do have a first place winner for residential will win $100, and second place would be $50. Also doing the same thing for businesses. And so we really want to get a lot of participants involved. And our council, I know we were supposed to do a video today. I don't know if anyone did it, but perhaps we can still try to promote it so that we have our residents get involved. And this is just basically so that we could have something positive at the end of the year of a very, you know, trying time during this year. So December 20th, Sunday at 5 p.m. is the deadline. So if any residents or businesses are interested, please go onto the city's website and register for the holiday decorating contest. And of course, City Council and Mayor, we are, hopefully everyone will be available to do the judging of the contest so that we could all participate in that. And I do want to say Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays. I know we probably won't see each other before then, but I just want everyone to enjoy their families, of course, social distance as much as possible. You know, just to speak to the comment Mr. Lawson stated about the article in the paper, I haven't been deeply involved in the city of turmoil era. I certainly do not see where we are there, but I do believe that it's something that people can grab onto the minute they start to see division within the board. Now, that's not to say that we will always agree. We don't have to always agree, but it's just the manner in which we do it. And we just don't want to give people any reason to assume that, you know, we're back to the outrageous behavior that was being displayed during that time. And as you know, Mr. Lawson stated, we have made a lot of progress. We continue to make progress. Mr. Evans and his team have been doing an outstanding job in trying to get projects out of the ground, get things going and moving along. Having been here around for a while, I cannot say we have been as progressive during that time. And so if we could just all stay, keep our eyes on the prize and realize that, our end goal is to do what's best for the residents and just give them a product that they could be proud of, I think we could still get to that goal. And of course, we all just need to respect one another. Disagreeing doesn't have to turn into disrespect. You can disagree and do it with respect. That's really all I wanted to say. I'd just like to thank everyone for all that you do. I know it's not an easy task and it's not an easy job for council people as well. And I did not quite hear everything that Mayor Masters said during his comments, but I do realize it had something to do with my being unopposed for the upcoming election in March. And I just want to thank the residents and actually, you know, those who may have thought about running against me. Hopefully we can work together if there is a reason why you were even considering running against me. I think it's important that everyone, you know, voices their opinions of what's going on. If there's something you want to bring before the city, you know, just we all are one team. So I do want to thank the residents and I appreciate everyone. I thank you for, you know, entrusting me to win a third term. That's all I like to say. Thank you, and you all have a nice holiday.
Thank you. He was actually comparing you to Kamala, and it was very favorable. So you should absolutely watch the reruns. And I do want to announce that
to him, he will do
Councilwoman
right.
Miller Anderson is not with us this evening because of illness. Mayor Felder, do you have any comments? Or?
Yes, I would like to just thank everybody for their prayers. I'm back, getting healthy. I became a new G Poppy last night. My first granddaughter, first grandkid was born last night, 10/13, so we're excited about that. Also, Saturday, we're going to be celebrating my dad's 83rd birthday. Brother Bob, many residents know him as Brother Bob. We're going to do a drive-by from Dallas Avenue, and hopefully he'll be out in front of Jay's Ministries. Well, he will be out in front of Jay's Ministries, so you guys are welcome to come and celebrate his 83rd birthday with us. And then Sunday at Wells from 12 to 3, I will be giving away to our Riviera Beach children 1,000 toys from 12 to 3 o'clock Sunday. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a few things. There will be a meeting on December 28th at 6 o'clock at the Ambassador Center, so it'll be a live and virtual meeting to discuss the managed mooring fields. It's very important that people, especially those of you who live on the water, come to that meeting so your questions can be answered. I'm happy to announce that more than 300 gifts from the Secret Santas of Tiara will be delivered to Stony Brook on Christmas Eve, and they're not just any random gifts. They're the gifts that the children asked for specifically in letters to Santa. So there are bicycles and scooters and all kinds of wonderful things. And I want to thank the Tiara Santas as well as volunteers who assembled or wrapped every single one of those gifts. The Singer Island rappers were from, I like that, the rappers were from Sugar Sands, Palm Beach Isles, Yacht Harbor Manor, the Marriott Resort Residences, Pine Point, and Yacht Harbor Estates, and they were joined by Friends of the Riviera Beach Schools directors, William Wiley and Janelle Gordon. I'm so proud of them all, and the children of Stony Brook will have the best Christmas ever. Also, well, on the subject of the Friends of the Riviera Beach Schools, which I can tout freely now because I'm no longer a director, they were just awarded a grant from the United Way of Palm Beach County. The letter says, in part, thank you for your recent application for the Palm Beach County Cares for Nonprofits grant. The Friends of the Riviera Beach Schools application was reviewed, and I'm pleased to inform you that it has been approved for $3,669. And this money will be used to assist with the work that the Friends are doing in tutoring with the JFK Middle School children, as well as the Lincoln Washington Elementary School children. We also have another grant on the horizon, and that's something called Pay for Success. Manufacturers Talent Pipeline, and it's a Department of U.S. Education Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education, and it will put some additional resources into JFK Middle School, Riviera Beach Prep and Achievement Academy, and the North Tech facility for construction and manufacturing. I want to thank Mr. Blankenship for looking into the matter of beach access paths. He did a very comprehensive report on the condition of the access paths, and we're planning to do a public meeting to discuss the options that are available so that people who use those paths will have their voices heard, and we can design them to be the best for the residents who use those paths to the beach. I want to join my colleagues in saying happy holidays to everyone. Happy Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah that we're celebrating now. And if there is no...
Madam Chair, can I say one quick thing?
Yes, go ahead.
Just want to wish my husband, Port Commissioner Joseph Anderson, a happy 50th birthday on this Tuesday. If you all see him sometime, let him know he's almost half a century. So I just wanted to make sure I put that out there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's probably the most important business we had to deal with this evening. And because I see no other business this meeting...
Doc,
yes.
those Stony Brook toys, can I get a PlayStation 5?
We had a limit of $50, Mr. McCoy, on those.
They're only selling for like $1,700.
Sorry. This meeting is adjourned.